Chapter 501. Wei Xinghe thought to himself. Ma Gu and Wei Xian's talents he was very aware of. Under normal circumstances, even if they were given several more years, they could not have made such progress. Now their cultivation speed is comparable to that of geniuses. There must be another reason behind it. Boom! Just as Wei Shanhai was astonished, the stone gate to where Wei Xinghe had been in seclusion slowly opened. A figure walked out from inside, full of vigor and vitality. Who else could it be but Wei Xinghe? Husband! Mrs. Wei greeted him somewhat excitedly. Ha ha! My lady, what brings you here? Wei Xinghe was feeling very cheerful at that moment, especially upon seeing his beloved wife. Indeed, I've finally entered the innate realm. Wei Shanhai nodded approvingly. Thank you, great ancestor, for coming to protect me. Wei Xinghe had sensed the presence of the great ancestor the moment he had condensed his innate body and officially entered the innate realm. After all, those in the innate realm carry a special innate essence, and as long as they are not too far apart, they can easily sense each other. Congratulations to the Wei family master on successfully entering the innate realm. At that moment, Lu Qing also stepped forward with a smile. Young Master Lu, old Dr. Chen, what are you doing here? Wei Xinghe only then noticed Lu Qing and the elder doctor, and he couldn't help but be greatly surprised, because just before in the secret chamber, he had not sensed the presence of Lu Qing and the others at all. We returned this morning, but since you were in seclusion, Wei family master, we didn't want to disturb you, Lu Qing explained. Wei Xinghe stared blankly at Lu Qing, because he discovered that even now, with Lu Qing standing right before him, he still couldn't detect any aura from him. If he wasn't seeing Lu Qing with his own eyes, he would have thought there was just a patch of air in front of him. This strange situation abruptly made Wei Xinghe realize that even though he was now an innate realm expert, in front of Lu Qing and the elder doctor, he was still dreadfully naive, unable to see through them at all. Involuntarily, Wei Xinghe's heart, which had been somewhat aloft from the breakthrough, became restrained. He understood that in the vast world, there were many strong individuals and countless who were stronger than him. He was merely newly initiated into the innate realm and far from having any right to be arrogant. Beside him, Wei Shanhai, seeing the expression on Wei Xinghe's face, nodded somewhat satisfied. The reason he hadn't spoken up before was to let Wei Xinghe realize the principle that there will always be someone stronger. Achieving the innate realm was merely the threshold to becoming a true powerhouse. If one became arrogant because of this, they would suffer greatly in the future. Dad! At that moment, Wei Xian, who had completed his breakthrough, leaped up from the ground. Xian is back as well. Seeing his son who had grown much sturdier, Wei Xinghe's face showed a look of relief. Dad, thanks to the momentum from your breakthrough, masters and my cultivation have also broken through, Wei Xian said happily. Is that so? That's very good. It seems that following young Master Lu on your journey has been worthwhile. You've been diligent and haven't slacked off. Wei Xinghe nodded. His heart and spirit, still unsettled by Lu Qing, inadvertently failed to notice the unusualness about his son. Wei Xinghe's breakthrough naturally caused great joy throughout the Wei mansion. Other major powers in the city also sent representatives with gifts to congratulate the Wei family master on his achievement. For a time, the Wei mansion was bustling with activity. And amid this bustle, Lu Qing and the elder doctor were leisurely leaving the county. Miss Hu, actually, you and Uncle Hu staying in the county would be better. There's no need to follow us. Jili Village is a remote and poor mountain village. I'm afraid you and Uncle Hu won't be accustomed to it. Lu Qing drove the carriage while speaking to the carriages behind him. Ma Gu and Wei Xian's families were in the city, and they wanted to stay at home for several days. The dragon blood steeds were difficult to control, so Lu Qing had to drive the carriage himself. His original thought was to ask the Wei family to arrange a place for Hu Zizhi and her father in the city. Unexpectedly, Hu Zizhi declined and expressed her wish to leave with Lu Qing and the others. The county is nice, but my father and I are strangers there, and we would probably feel even less comfortable. Young Master Lu, don't worry. Zheji grew up in poverty as well, and I'm not afraid of hardship, Hu Zheji said softly. In fact, she was very curious about the village where Mr. Lu and little Yen lived. She was eager to see what kind of village could nurture someone like Lu Qing, a dragon phoenix among people. Of course, there were also some deep-seated girlish thoughts that were not for outsiders to know. As for Uncle Hu III, he was even less likely to object. After witnessing the miraculous methods of Lu Qing and the elder doctor, even a fool knew how rare an opportunity it was to be able to follow them. Seeing that Hu Zheji had said so, Lu Qing naturally found it hard to persuade her further. After all, Jili village was not too far from the county city. If Hu Zheji and the others really found it hard to adjust to life there, leaving would be a simple matter. Brother, little Li has been asleep for so long. Why hasn't it woken up yet? At this moment, little Yan's somewhat worried voice came from inside the carriage. I have already checked. Little Li's body is undergoing a transformation. Don't worry, there is nothing wrong with it, and it should wake up in a few days. Lu Qing consoled. Ever since it swallowed a stream of origin energy in the holy city, little Li had been in a deep sleep. It hadn't woken up even once during the entirety of their journey. Lu Qing would check on little Li's condition every day with his superpower and found that it was undergoing an extremely important transformation, and its bodily condition was also without any issues. Therefore, he didn't interfere with the process or forcefully awaken it. Instead, he was somewhat looking forward to seeing what changes would occur when little Li completed its transformation and woke up. The wind-controlling chariot traveled at a swift and unparalleled speed. Even though Lu Qing did not deliberately speed up, it was not long before Jili village was already in sight. Looking at the familiar scenes on both sides, Lu Qing involuntarily shut down the chariot's array and slowed down its speed. Brother, are we almost there? Little Yen, feeling the chariot decelerate, asked. Yes, we are nearly home. Little Yen immediately lifted the curtain at the front of the carriage and stuck her little head out. Then she saw the familiar scenery outside, especially the little river just outside the village. Her eyes widened in surprise. It's true, Grandpa Chun. We're about to return to the village. Old Dr. Chun also looked out through the carriage window at the scenery outside. He too felt somewhat sentimental. Although their journey this time was not too long, only a few months, many things had happened during that period. So now, seeing that they were about to return to the village, he couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. The carriage moved at a leisurely pace while Lu Qing slowly savored the scenery he had not seen for many months. He was also sensing the changes in the heaven and earth around him. He found that, indeed, as Wei Shanhai had said, the spiritual energy around Jili village had become much denser after a few months. Though it was still incomparable to Central State, it was sufficient for his and his master's daily cultivation. After all, he and his master were still only at the qi refining realm. And with the passage of time, the spiritual energy would become denser and denser. It would not impact the cultivation of him and his master. The carriage trotted along, eventually arriving at the entrance to Jili village. Such an obvious movement naturally alarmed those inside the village early on. Immediately, villagers came out to see what was happening. Some villagers, upon seeing the two tall and majestic dragon blood steeds in front of the carriage, felt the immense aura emanating from them and couldn't help but feel their legs shake. At the same time, their hearts began to pound. Those capable of driving such a mutant beast-drawn carriage were surely no ordinary people. Regrettably, due to the angle and the obstruction of the horses, they couldn't clearly see the person driving the carriage at once. Just as the villagers were deliberating whether to go to the Wei family's branch manor to send word, suddenly, a small figure jumped down from the carriage and ran toward the village with arms wide open, happily shouting, "Uncle Zhang, little Yen is back. It's little Yen." That villager immediately widened his eyes. Chapter 502. The Angered Ginseng, Changes in the Deep Mountains. Jili village entrance, bustling with activity. All the villagers who had heard of Lu Qing and his group's return scrambled out from inside the village. Truly, It's Ah Ching and the others returning. It's been several months, and Ah Ching seems a bit different. Little Yen has changed as well. She's grown some. What kind of horses are those two? And why do they have horns on their heads? Who is that girl? So strikingly beautiful. In this and the neighboring 8 villages, we've never seen such a gorgeous girl. The villagers were abuzz, some gauging the changes in Lu Qing and his group, others curious about the 2 dragon blood steeds. Some were even amazed by Hu Zheji's appearance. Amidst the discussion, Lu Qing approached Grandpa Zhang. Grandpa Zhang, I'm back. It's good you're back safely. Good you're back safely. Grandpa Zhang's eyes were slightly moist, his body shaking with excitement. Didn't you encounter any danger on your trip? There was none. We were very safe, with Master watching over us, and we didn't stir up trouble, Lu Qing said with a smile. On the side, the elder doctor. However, Grandpa Zhang took it seriously and promptly bowed to the elder doctor, saying, Thank you, elder doctor, for looking after Ah Ching and little Yen. Otherwise, with Ah Ching's youthful vigor, who knows what trouble he might have caused. The elder doctor hesitated slightly but then smiled. Old Master Zhang jests. Along the way, it was Ah Ching and little Yen who took care of my daily needs. This old man didn't do much. That's what Ah Ching should do as a disciple. Should do. Grandpa Zhang, let's go inside the village. Seeing Grandpa Zhang seemed inclined to continue expressing his gratitude, Lu Qing hurriedly spoke. Right. Look at this old muddlehead. You've traveled such a long way. You must be tired. Go back to the village to rest. Grandpa Zhang smacked his head and said, I'll go and take down the red rope. Lu Qing walked to the letter tree where, at the start of the journey, he had tied 3 red ropes and now gently took them down. Although months of exposure to wind and rain had faded the red ropes slightly, Lu Qing still carefully placed them under a stone slab. Seeing this, the villagers all smiled. Back at home, Lu Qing found the weeds in the courtyard had been thoroughly cleared. Inside the house was spotless, and it didn't look like it had been uninhabited for several months. The house was even cleaner than when Lu Qing and little Yen had left. Lu Qing knew that surely Grandpa Zhang and the others had come to clean every day to keep the house dust-free. Ah Qing, you've just returned. I presume you haven't had a chance to prepare any food yet, so I'll have Uncle Zhang and others come over. Grandpa Zhang looked around and said. Lu Qing was about to speak when suddenly, a loud noise came from outside. A voice shouted, Young Master Lu, in the name of Master Ma, I've brought you some items. Brother Tian? Lu Qing stepped out and saw Xiao Tian, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, standing at the courtyard gate with several people, all of them carrying loads on their shoulders. Brother Tian, did you come from the big market? Yes, I just received Master Ma's pigeon delivery and learned that you had returned, young master. Master Ma asked me to bring some daily necessities for you and old Dr. Chun. Xiao Tian said respectfully. It's always Master Ma thinking ahead. Please bring the things inside. Xiao Tian and his men brought in the loads. There were all kinds of items, from rice and meat, vegetables and fruits, even to daily toiletries, all prepared. Young Master Lu, see if there's anything else you need, and I will immediately have it sent over. There's no need. It looks quite complete here, thank you, Brother Tian. After inspecting the items and finding nothing amiss, Lu Qing nodded his thanks. In that case, I won't disturb young Master Lu further. With those words, Xiao Tian respectfully bowed and then left with his men. Lu Qing watched them go, shaking his head. Xiao Tian seemed much more reserved this return. Who knows what Master Ma had said to him in the letter? Grandpa Zhang, look. I'm not short of food here. You needn't trouble yourself. Lu Qing turned around and said with a smile. Grandpa Zhang looked at the items on the ground and also smiled. It really is Ah Qing who has the influence. Gifts arrive as soon as you return. That person Xiao Tian Grandpa Zhang had seen quite a few times over the past 2 years. Periodically, he would personally deliver some daily necessities to Lu Qing's place. But he hadn't expected him to have such swift news. Lu Qing had just returned, and Xiao Tian was already there. Right, Grandpa Zhang, I just returned today and haven't prepared anything. I'm sorry to keep everyone waiting. Let's wait a day or two. Then I'll arrange a dozen banquet tables to really celebrate with everyone. All right, today you have guests, and I won't bother you further. You go ahead and attend to your guests. Grandpa Zhang did not insist. He knew that such expenses were nothing to Lu Qing. After all the villagers had left, Lu Qing then said to Hu Ziji and his daughter, "The villagers care about me and little Yen, so they were a bit noisy. My apologies if it caused you discomfort." "Not at all. It's rare to see such simple and genuine villagers. It's our fortune to be able to stay here," Uncle Hu quickly said. "By the way, before coming back, I had already spoken to Senior Wei. Uncle Hu, you and your daughter can temporarily stay at Wei family's annex." Chapter 503. Thus, Lu Qing led Hu Ziji and his daughter to temporarily stay at the Wei family's separate residence. After settling them down, he then went over to the half-mountain small courtyard. He wanted to help the elder doctor clean up the house. However, when he arrived at the half-mountain small courtyard, he found that it was also very neat. He didn't know if it was the villagers' doing or if Wei Shanhai, who often came here to pick plum tea, had sent someone to clean up. "Ah Qing, come here." At this moment, the voice of the elder doctor came from behind the house. "What is it, master?" Lu Qing walked to the back of the house, intending to inquire, but suddenly stopped in astonishment. Beside the elder doctor, there was a vibrant small garden, enclosed by a fence, emanating a rich vitality. It was the medicine field they had opened before. This medicine field. As Lu Qing approached, he saw that the various medicinal herbs in the field were growing vigorously, and he felt astonished. In just a few months, these herbs had grown as if they had spent 10 years maturing. The medicinal power was ample, and they were now completely usable. More importantly, he also felt that the Earth's energy here was very rich. It was as if the Earth's energy from several miles around was continuously gathering here. There was also an extremely vibrant wood vitality lurking below. That 1,000-year-old ginseng, it actually didn't escape? Lu Qing instantly recognized the source of the vitality and was immediately surprised, because that was the very 1,000-year-old ginseng with spiritual wisdom, which he had captured initially, and then the elder doctor had placed it in the medicine field to help manage and disperse the Earth's energy. Originally, when they left the village to go to Central State that day, Lu Qing had thought that by the time they returned, this 1,000-year-old ginseng would have long since escaped. Unexpectedly, it was still in the medicine field. And looking at the current situation, it was still diligently and wholeheartedly helping to manage and cultivate this plot of the field. It seemed to sense the movement outside, and the originally dormant vitality suddenly showed some changes. Quietly rising upward, soon, a few leaves slowly emerged. Seeing this, Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. "You audacious thing, aren't you afraid of being captured again?" This remark immediately made those few leaves swoosh back into the ground. But very quickly, the 1,000-year-old ginseng seemed to realize something was wrong. Suddenly it came out from the ground again and approached the elder doctor, half of its plump body appearing, with several leaves on top, waving like human arms, excitedly gesturing something as if complaining. "This little thing seems to have gained more spiritual wisdom?" Lu Qing was somewhat surprised. Could it be influenced by the recovery of the spiritual energy? All right, I know I broke my promise. Now I'll make it up to you." The elder doctor repeatedly apologized and took out a jade bottle from his bosom, dropping a milky white medicine liquid onto it. As the medicine liquid fell on its body, the 1,000-year-old ginseng immediately stiffened, and then, with a slurp, it absorbed the medicine liquid. The leaves on its head shook, seemingly enjoying the sensation very much. Then, in the next moment, it disappeared, burrowing into the ground to absorb the medicine liquid. It could no longer care about settling the matter of the elder doctor's broken promise. "Master, you've really invested a lot this time, giving it a whole drop of earth vein spirit liquid," said Lu Qing with a laugh. "Since it didn't leave, it has accepted this place, and as it has managed the medicine field so well, it deserves some compensation." the elder doctor responded. When the elder doctor first opened the medicine field, he had an agreement with this ginseng. As long as it helped regulate the earth's energy daily, he would give it a drop of medicine liquid diluted from earth vein spirit liquid every 3 days. Afterward, when they were to go to Central State, this agreement was not continued. He thought that the 1,000-year-old ginseng would leave, but unexpectedly, it stayed here all this time. Since it's willing to stay, then it's perfect. Disciple, now that I've returned, I want to study the way of arrays for some time. Then, see if I can gather the earth's energy and spiritual energy through arrays to open up a true spiritual medicine garden. Lu Qing spoke earnestly. He had held this idea for a long time. Now, as the world and spiritual energy were recovering, all things in this world were also entering a period of mysterious changes. In this gradual transformation, some spiritual beasts and spiritual medicines from ancient legends might also appear one after another in the days to come. But for Lu Qing it was still somewhat too slow. So he wanted to try to see if he could, relying on what he had learned, cultivate a batch of spiritual medicine in advance and seize the initiative. This is very good. Now, with the enormous changes in heaven and earth, epidemics might also undergo unpredictable transformations. If we could cultivate spiritual medicine, when we encounter those intractable diseases in the future, we wouldn't be completely helpless. The elder doctor, upon hearing this, rejoiced greatly. Being a doctor with medical benevolence, he was already worried about the current changes in heaven and earth. Lu Qing's idea was exactly what they needed to prepare in advance. Also, Master, tomorrow I would like to go into the mountains to see the condition there. Little Yen and the others, I'll need you to take care of them temporarily. All right, go ahead without worries and be safe, the elder doctor solemnly said. He knew his disciples' concerns. Although their trip to Central State this time brought great gains and incredible opportunities, it also planted quite a few seeds of disaster and offended many people. Suspended Mountain goes without saying, it was already a mortal foe. And then there was Holy Mountain, which always stood in the world with a name for justice. But people have their selfish motives. That third saint, having been defeated by Lu Qing in front of so many powerful beings, nobody could guarantee he wouldn't bear any resentment. Otherwise, the day they left, Holy Mountain would not have ordered the Heavenly Mechanism Tower Master to invite Lu Qing up the mountain. Besides that, there was also the mysterious demon cultivator who Lu Qing had severely injured and the possible remains of the Qi family, etc. These were all potential threats. As they came back this time, they traveled by the wind-controlling chariot with a speed beyond the reach of ordinary people. However, there was still a trace to follow. For the time being, others might not know their whereabouts, but if someone was determined, it was hard to say whether they could locate Jili village. Thus, caution was paramount. I will be careful, Lu Qing nodded. The next day, after worshipping at his parents' graves with little Yen, Lu Qing brought her and little Li to the half-mountain small courtyard. Then he entered 10,000 great mountains alone. Along the way, Lu Qing carefully sensed and examined the changes in the mountains. Then, under dual examination by divine soul sensing and superpower, Lu Qing discovered that significant changes had indeed occurred in the mountains. First were the plants. The plants in the mountains were growing much more vigorously, especially the wood vitality, which had become very thick. If a cultivator of wood element true qi or spiritual power came to Deep Mountain for secluded cultivation, their cultivation could progress significantly faster. Then there were the animals. The changes in the creatures of the mountain were also significant, especially the poisonous insects and snakes which had become much more ferocious. The toxicity contained within their bodies had greatly increased. An ordinary person entering here, if bitten even once, would likely die immediately. Even postnatal realm martial artists, if poisoned and unable to promptly expel the poison and receive treatment, probably wouldn't last long. Looks like the defense work for the village needs to start early. Feeling the changes in the mountains, Lu Qing's mood was somewhat heavy. These poisonous insects and snakes in the deep mountains were naturally no threat to him. But for the villagers, they were extremely dangerous. If someone was accidentally bitten, it could be a big problem. As he thought about this, Lu Qing unconsciously arrived at a familiar place. The changes here aren't too significant. Looking at the dazzlingly beautiful, flower-filled mountain valley ahead, Lu Qing smiled. This trip into the mountains, besides wanting to inspect the situation, his most important goal was to check whether there had been any changes at the Jade Cave. It seems now that the changes weren't as significant as he had imagined. As usual, after briefly paying homage in front of Li Weiyin's grave, Lu Qing crossed the waterfall and entered into the heart of the mountain. Chapter 504. Change in the cave, unexpected joy, killing the chicken to scare the monkey. Indeed, there have been some changes here. Lu Qing made his way along the path, delving deeper into the belly of the mountain. He noticed that the earth's energy within the passageway was extremely rich. The spiritual energy was also continuously gathering here. Soon, he saw an array formation light screen blocking the way ahead. Has even the defensive array regained some of its power? Lu Qing was somewhat surprised. The Jade Cave had always been protected by a defensive array. When Li Weitian had found this place years ago, the defensive array was still maintaining a hint of operation. It was precisely because of his attempt to break the defensive array's defense that he had greatly exhausted his primordial qi and suffered severe injuries. With his life nearing its end, he had no choice but to take a risk and make a breakthrough, only to perish within the Jade Cave. Now, after the recovery of spiritual energy, the defensive array here had begun to absorb spiritual energy again, slowly started operating, and even brought forth the array formation light screen. The mysterious person who established the Jade Cave all those years ago truly had unimaginable divine skills. Despite many years without the nourishment of spiritual energy, the array was still able to operate as usual. With a thought, Lu Qing's divine soul power extended from the brow chakra and seeped toward the array formation light screen ahead. Inheriting the knowledge of Divine Talisman Sect and having condensed the Divine Soul Talisman, he naturally wasn't attacked by the array here. Upon sensing the hint of Divine Soul energy, the array formation light screen retracted, allowing Lu Qing to pass through. As he slowly stepped through, the array formation light screen closed again. Lu Qing was satisfied in his heart. This would make it much safer for him to come here for seclusion in the future. He wouldn't need little Li to act as a protector each time. Entering the Jade Cave, Lu Qing was even more delighted. Inside the Jade Cave, the spiritual energy was much more intense than outside. It was already comparable to what he had previously felt in Azure Dragon City. I can indeed come here often for seclusion in the future. Lu Qing, gazing at the array runes on the cave walls, pondered. The mysterious being who had established the Jade Cave had set up a very complete and powerful array. It featured defense, gathering spirit, and concealing aura among its brilliant functions. Now, the rich spiritual energy in the cave was indeed the effect of the array's gathering spirit. And this earth vein spirit liquid, its condensation speed has also increased a lot. Lu Qing looked toward the jade altar in the middle, only to see it brimming with spiritual charm, and another drop of earth vein spirit liquid had actually condensed. Above, the tip of the stalactite was also gathering plenty of spiritual charm. It seemed that it would not be long before another drop of earth vein spirit liquid emerged. Earth vein spirit liquid that originally took 20 years to condense can now be condensed in about a year after these changes in the world. After sensing the condensing speed of the spiritual charm in the stalactite and making some calculations, a look of joy appeared on Lu Qing's face. If this was the case, it was indeed good news for him. Earth vein spirit liquid was wonderful stuff. Not only could it improve a person's talent, enabling rebirth and greatly increasing their potential, but it also had the effects of reviving the deceased, an incredibly potent spiritual medicine for healing. Such spiritual objects were indeed beneficial in abundance. Previously, when spiritual energy was depleted, condensing a drop of earth vein spirit liquid required 20 years, which was too long for Lu Qing. But if it took just 1 year now, the situation was entirely different. Its value greatly increased. And at this moment, it is only the beginning of the world's change, with spiritual energy having just started to recover. If the density of spiritual energy could increase further over time, reaching the level of central state, the speed at which the earth vein spirit liquid condensed might continue to decrease. In that case, this rare treasure liquid could become a very important resource in Lu Qing's hands. This is truly an unexpected joy. Lu Qing calmed the excitement in his heart and entered the normal cave for seclusion, casually releasing a small tripod. The tripod fell to the ground and quickly grew in the wind until it was half a person tall, which was the leaving fire tripod. Kid, you're being too unkind. Why keep blocking my perception? A wave of indignant divine soul fluctuation emanated from the leaving fire tripod. It was the voice of the artifact spirit Yen. I have many secrets, and I'd prefer you not to know too much, Lu Qing replied coolly. Ever since refining the leaving fire tripod, he had used the restrictions within the tripod to block Yan's perception, allowing it to stay within the tripod space but unable to sense the outside world. Lu Qing's words caught Yen off guard. It had not expected Lu Qing to reply so straightforwardly, not even bothering with an excuse. But just this was naturally not enough to calm its rage. But you've completely sealed off the leaving fire tripod. How am I supposed to absorb spiritual energy and recover? Don't forget, the more my power recovers, the more help I can offer you. So isn't that why I've let you out now? The spiritual energy here should be able to help you recover slowly, right? In the face of Yan's questioning, Lu Qing did not become angry. He still spoke indifferently. This demeanor immediately irritated Yen a bit. Initially, it had seen through that this kid was no easy target, which is why it did not want to be refined by him. Unfortunately, the situation was stronger than the people, and it eventually ended up in this situation. Knowing that it could do nothing to Lu Qing even if it remained angry, Yen had to settle down its anger, starting to observe the surrounding situation. After taking a good look, it was immediately astonished. Why is the spiritual energy here so dense? Kid, where is this place? Senior, have you ever heard of the sect called Divine Talisman Sect? Asked Lu Qing. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this name, Yen was greatly startled. Chapter 505. Changes in the cave chamber, unexpected joy, killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. His voice trembled. What did you say? Divine Talisman Sect? Indeed, Divine Talisman Sect. From the tone of elder, it seems you are familiar with this sect. Lu Qing's heart stirred, somewhat taken aback by the artifact spirit's reaction. Could it be that the Divine Talisman Sect was some formidable sect during the ancient era of immortal cultivation? Of course, I know this sect. You could say that during the ancient era of immortal cultivation, the Divine Talisman Sect was one of the most powerful sects. That impressive? Lu Qing was a bit shocked. However, this revelation allowed Yen to see a clue. Looking at you, kid, could it be that you have some connection to the Divine Talisman Sect? That's right, your divine soul power is extraordinary. You are merely at the Qi refinement early stage, yet you possess divine soul power comparable to the foundation establishment stage. In the ancient era of immortal cultivation, disciples from the Divine Talisman lineage were renowned for their powerful divine souls. Could it be that you're actually an inheritor of the Divine Talisman Sect? The more Yen spoke, the more it felt its conjecture was correct. However, soon it became puzzled again. No, that's not right. With the ancient spiritual energy depleted, all cultivators above the golden core were unable to escape the great tribulation of the heavenly human five decays. Even the Divine Talisman Sect shouldn't have had divine skills that would allow them to survive in this realm for tens of thousands of years. There's no need to guess anymore. I'm not a disciple of the Divine Talisman Sect. I merely chanced upon some of its inheritance. The place we are now is a small cave dwelling left by the Divine Talisman Sect at some unknown time. Just a bit of the Divine Talisman Sect's inheritance allowed you to cultivate to this extent? Yen looked at Lu Qing as if he were looking at a monster. You should know, in the ancient era of immortal cultivation, disciples of the Divine Talisman Sect were notoriously stringent in their talent requirements. Many disciples from other cultivation sects, who would be considered geniuses, could potentially fail even to qualify for entry into the Divine Talisman Sect. This also led to the Divine Talisman sect being well known, yet its number of disciples was not large. Compared to other top sects, it seemed a bit sparse in manpower. But the disciples of the Divine Talisman sect were known to be incredibly powerful and mysterious, far surpassing those from other sects. In that era, when the immortal Tao was flourishing and prodigies were emerging one after another, few could manage to be accepted into the Divine Talisman sect. It goes to show how high the requirements were for cultivation talents in that sect. Yet now, with just a bit of inheritance, Lu Qing had managed to cultivate something significant on his own. This cultivation talent could no longer merely be described as genius. Even calling it devilish might not be an overstatement. No wonder this kid managed to provoke tribulation clouds and pass through the heavenly tribulation just as the spiritual energy had begun to recover. The artifact spirit finally understood just how fearsome Lu Qing really was. Yan Elder, what is this heavenly human 5 decays tribulation you just mentioned? Lu Qing was interested in a piece of information the artifact spirit had let slip. The heavenly human 5 decays, huh? The artifact spirit shifted its gaze. Kid, if you want to extract information from me, it won't be that simple. How about we make a deal? What kind of deal? Lu Qing quietly watched the big cauldron. You want to know about the ancient era of immortal cultivation, fine, but you must also meet a few of my conditions. For example, not to arbitrarily block my perception, you must allow me to be aware of the outside world at all times. If you agree, I will tell you about the great tribulation of the heavenly human 5 decays. Seeing that the artifact spirit was negotiating terms with him again, Lu Qing smiled and said, "Let's talk about it later. I summoned the Leaving Fire tripod this time to ask Elder to assist me, a junior, in a matter." Yen felt disappointed that Lu Qing did not agree to its conditions, but still couldn't help being curious. What matter? This. Lu Qing took out the Chenkuan Qi bag from his waist, divided his mind into 2, and simultaneously activated 2 spiritual artifacts. The Chenkuan Qi bag suddenly swelled and spat out a gray gourd. Immediately after, the mouth of the Leaving Fire tripod opened and swallowed it up, suppressing it. The Plague Elder inside the gourd, who had initially felt the restraints around him suddenly disappear and was startled, hadn't had time to rejoice when he found himself engulfed in darkness, entering another space. This space was different from that inside the Chenkuan Qi bag. It was filled with a blazing aura, as if entering a furnace. What the hell is this place? Another spiritual artifact space. Impossible. Even if that kid's luck defies the heavens, he couldn't possibly own 2 spiritual artifacts at the same time. Otherwise, just casually activating one would consume enough energy to drain him. The Plague Elder was somewhat panicked inside, but still tried to reassure himself. He strained to sense his surroundings, trying to penetrate the mystery of this space. However, no matter how he searched, all around was a void. Apart from the invisible force pressing down on the plague gourd, rendering it completely immobile, he could detect nothing at all. This situation caused the Plague Elder's heart to sink steadily. He had a bad feeling, but unwilling to give up, he continued to extend his heart and spirit, attempting to find some trace of this space. While the Plague Elder was diligently searching, in a place beyond his perception, Lu Qing and Yan's Will were observing the plague gourd. Is this gourd that plague old ghosts' plague gourd? Yen looked at the suppressed gray gourd in surprise. Do you know the origin of this gourd? Lu Qingwen inquired. Of course I do. The plague old ghost was also a character to be reckoned with during the ancient immortal cultivation era. Although his cultivation was only at the initial realm of the primordial spirit, somehow he had the damnedest luck and refined a life-bound spiritual artifact. That is the plague gourd you see here. With this life-bound spiritual artifact, the plague old ghost became tremendously more powerful. Even when facing the mighty ones at the middle stage of primordial spirit, he would not be at a disadvantage. Adding to that, his natural caution and strange methods meant that even during that era of powerful beings, he still had a significant reputation. Even the ordinary cultivation sects would not dare to provoke this demon. Yen spoke at length. This time, he didn't negotiate terms with Lu Qing, but readily shared the history of the plague gourd. But he was also puzzled. However, how did this plague gourd end up in your hands? Not long ago, I obtained it while dealing with some matters, said Lu Qing offhandedly. Yan immediately gave Lu Qing a strange look. This kid's luck was simply too heaven-defying. To single-handedly possess 3 spiritual artifacts in the ancient immortal cultivation era was simply unimaginable. Unless it was a cultivator of great divine power above the primordial spirit, otherwise, once the news spread, even those with perfect primordial spirit would undoubtedly be coveted by many primordial spirit powerhouses. After a good while, Yan managed to suppress the shock in his heart. He asked, "So, the matter you want my help with relates to this plague gourd?" Lu Qing nodded. "Exactly. Within the plague gourd, there remains the sole remnant of that plague old ghost. I want your help to refine it away." "The sole remnant of the plague old ghost? Impossible." Hearing this, Yan was once again greatly startled. How could that plague old ghost survive the heavenly human 5 decays tribulation? Wait, could it be that the old ghost possessed his own life-bound spiritual artifact spirit? Yan, a relic from the ancient immortal cultivation era, managed to deduce the truth from just a few words from Lu Qing. It seems that's what the old ghost claimed. With his interference, I imagine it would be very difficult to refine the plague gourd. That's why I'm thinking of using the leaving fire tripod to completely refine him to death. The plague gourd was different from the leaving fire tripod. Lu Qing did not possess the corresponding controlling spell. Therefore, unlike the leaving fire tripod that could still be forcibly refined despite the artifact spirit's obstruction, he could not do the same with the plague gourd. Only by completely refining or killing off the plague elder could he fully control this magical treasure. Are you certain? Once the sole remnant of the plague old ghost, which has become the artifact spirit, is killed, without the artifact spirit, the grade of this plague gourd is likely to fall out of the rank of spiritual artifacts. Yan said, somewhat hesitantly. It doesn't matter. I'm not lacking this one spiritual artifact anyway. That old ghost once mocked me. If I don't teach him a lesson, he might really think I'm a pushover. I will refine him to death completely. If it comes to that, I'll just find another opportunity in the future to cultivate a new artifact spirit, said Lu Qing, his tone somewhat cold. Hearing this, Yan shivered inside. It always felt like Lu Qing's words had an underlying message. But before Yan could understand, Lu Qing's figure suddenly disappeared from beside it. When he reappeared, he was in front of the plague gourd. At the same time, a voice echoed throughout the space. Plague old ghost, there's no use in trying anymore. Didn't you say last time that I can't do anything to you? This time, I'd like to see if your mouth can still be so tough. His voice trembled. What did you say? Divine Talisman Sect. Indeed, Divine Talisman Sect. From the tone of elder, it seems you are familiar with this sect. Lu Qing's heart stirred, somewhat taken aback by the artifact spirit's reaction. Could it be that the Divine Talisman Sect was some formidable sect during the ancient era of immortal cultivation? Of course, I know this sect. You could say that during the ancient era of immortal cultivation, the Divine Talisman Sect was one of the most powerful sects. That impressive? Lu Qing was a bit shocked. However, this revelation allowed Yan to see a clue. Looking at you, kid, could it be that you have some connection to the Divine Talisman Sect? That's right, your divine soul power is extraordinary. You are merely at the Qi refinement early stage, yet you possess divine soul power comparable to the foundation establishment stage. In the ancient era of immortal cultivation, disciples from the Divine Talisman lineage were renowned for their powerful divine souls. Could it be that you're actually an inheritor of the Divine Talisman Sect? The more Yan spoke, the more it felt its conjecture was correct. However, soon it became puzzled again. No, that's not right. With the ancient spiritual energy depleted, all cultivators above the golden core were unable to escape the great tribulation of the heavenly human 5 decays. Even the Divine Talisman Sect shouldn't have had divine skills that would allow them to survive in this realm for tens of thousands of years. There's no need to guess anymore. I'm not a disciple of the Divine Talisman sect. I merely chanced upon some of its inheritance. The place we are now is a small cave dwelling left by the Divine Talisman sect at some unknown time. Just a bit of the Divine Talisman sect's inheritance allowed you to cultivate to this extent? Yan looked at Lu Qing as if he were looking at a monster. You should know, in the ancient era of immortal cultivation, disciples of the Divine Talisman sect were notoriously stringent in their talent requirements. Many disciples from other cultivation sects, who would be considered geniuses, could potentially fail even to qualify for entry into the Divine Talisman sect. This also led to the Divine Talisman sect being well known, yet its number of disciples was not large. Compared to other top sects, it seemed a bit sparse in manpower. But the disciples of the Divine Talisman sect were known to be incredibly powerful and mysterious, far surpassing those from other sects. In that era, when the immortal Tao was flourishing and prodigies were emerging one after another, few could manage to be accepted into the Divine Talisman sect. It goes to show how high the requirements were for cultivation talents in that sect. Yet now, with just a bit of inheritance, Lu Qing had managed to cultivate something significant on his own. This cultivation talent could no longer merely be described as genius. Even calling it devilish might not be an overstatement. No wonder this kid managed to provoke tribulation clouds and pass through the heavenly tribulation just as the spiritual energy had begun to recover. The artifact spirit finally understood just how fearsome Lu Qing really was. Yan Elder, what is this heavenly human 5 decays tribulation you just mentioned? Lu Qing was interested in a piece of information the artifact spirit had let slip. The heavenly human 5 decays, huh? The artifact spirit shifted its gaze. Kid, if you want to extract information from me, it won't be that simple. How about we make a deal? What kind of deal? Lu Qing quietly watched the big cauldron. You want to know about the ancient era of immortal cultivation, fine, but you must also meet a few of my conditions. For example, not to arbitrarily block my perception, you must allow me to be aware of the outside world at all times. If you agree, I will tell you about the great tribulation of the heavenly human 5 decays. Seeing that the artifact spirit was negotiating terms with him again, Lu Qing smiled and said, "Let's talk about it later. I summoned the Leaving Fire tripod this time to ask Elder to assist me, a junior, in a matter." Yan felt disappointed that Lu Qing did not agree to its conditions, but still couldn't help being curious. What matter? This. Lu Qing took out the Chenkuan Qi bag from his waist, divided his mind into 2, and simultaneously activated 2 spiritual artifacts. The Chenkuan Qi bag suddenly swelled and spat out a gray gourd. Immediately after, the mouth of the Leaving Fire tripod opened and swallowed it up, suppressing it. The Plague Elder inside the gourd, who had initially felt the restraints around him suddenly disappear and was startled, hadn't had time to rejoice when he found himself engulfed in darkness, entering another space. This space was different from that inside the Chenkuan Qi bag. It was filled with a blazing aura, as if entering a furnace. What the hell is this place? Another spiritual artifact space. Impossible. Even if that kid's luck defies the heavens, he couldn't possibly own 2 spiritual artifacts at the same time. Otherwise, just casually activating one would consume enough energy to drain him. The Plague Elder was somewhat panicked inside, but still tried to reassure himself. He strained to sense his surroundings, trying to penetrate the mystery of this space. However, no matter how he searched, all around was a void. Apart from the invisible force pressing down on the plague gourd, rendering it completely immobile, he could detect nothing at all. This situation caused the Plague Elder's heart to sink steadily. He had a bad feeling, but unwilling to give up, he continued to extend his heart and spirit, attempting to find some trace of this space. While the Plague Elder was diligently searching, in a place beyond his perception, Lu Qing and Yan's Will were observing the plague gourd. "Is this gourd that plague old ghosts plague gourd?" Yan looked at the suppressed gray gourd in surprise. "Do you know the origin of this gourd?" Lu Qingwen inquired. "Of course I do. The plague old ghost was also a character to be reckoned with during the ancient immortal cultivation era. Although his cultivation was only at the initial realm of the primordial spirit, somehow he had the damnedest luck and refined a life-bound spiritual artifact. That is the plague gourd you see here. With this life-bound spiritual artifact, the plague old ghost became tremendously more powerful. Even when facing the mighty ones at the middle stage of primordial spirit, he would not be at a disadvantage. Adding to that, his natural caution and strange methods meant that even during that era of powerful beings, he still had a significant reputation. Even the ordinary cultivation sects would not dare to provoke this demon. Yen spoke at length. This time he didn't negotiate terms with Lu Qing, but readily shared the history of the plague gourd. But he was also puzzled. However, how did this plague gourd end up in your hands? Not long ago, I obtained it while dealing with some matters, said Lu Qing offhandedly. Yen immediately gave Lu Qing a strange look. This kid's luck was simply too heaven-defying. To single-handedly possess 3 spiritual artifacts in the ancient immortal cultivation era was simply unimaginable. Unless it was a cultivator of great divine power above the primordial spirit, otherwise, once the news spread, even those with perfect primordial spirit would undoubtedly be coveted by many primordial spirit powerhouses. After a good while, Yen managed to suppress the shock in his heart. He asked, "So, the matter you want my help with relates to this plague gourd?" Lu Qing nodded. "Exactly. Within the plague gourd, there remains the sole remnant of that plague old ghost. I want your help to refine it away." The sole remnant of the plague old ghost? Impossible. Hearing this, Yen was once again greatly startled. How could that plague old ghost survive the heavenly human 5 decays tribulation? Wait, could it be that the old ghost possessed his own life-bound spiritual artifact's artifact spirit? Yen, a relic from the ancient immortal cultivation era, managed to deduce the truth from just a few words from Lu Qing. It seems that's what the old ghost claimed. With his interference, I imagine it would be very difficult to refine the plague gourd. That's why I'm thinking of using the leaving fire tripod to completely refine him to death. The plague gourd was different from the leaving fire tripod. Lu Qing did not possess the corresponding controlling spell. Therefore, unlike the leaving fire tripod that could still be forcibly refined despite the artifact spirit's obstruction, he could not do the same with the plague gourd. Only by completely refining or killing off the plague elder could he fully control this magical treasure. Are you certain? Once the sole remnant of the plague old ghost, which has become the artifact spirit, is killed, without the artifact spirit, the grade of this plague gourd is likely to fall out of the rank of spiritual artifacts. Yen said, somewhat hesitantly. It doesn't matter. I'm not lacking this one spiritual artifact anyway. That old ghost once mocked me. If I don't teach him a lesson, he might really think I'm a pushover. I will refine him to death completely. If it comes to that, I'll just find another opportunity in the future to cultivate a new artifact spirit, said Lu Qing, his tone somewhat cold. Hearing this, Yen shivered inside. It always felt like Lu Qing's words had an underlying message. But before Yen could understand, Lu Qing's figure suddenly disappeared from beside it. When he reappeared, he was in front of the plague gourd. At the same time, a voice echoed throughout the space. Plague old ghost, there's no use in trying anymore. Didn't you say last time that I can't do anything to you? This time, I'd like to see if your mouth can still be so tough. Kid, where is this place, and what exactly do you want? Plague Elder was taken aback when Lu Qing suddenly appeared, especially since he realized at a glance that the other was a divine soul power illusion. His face changed dramatically, and his heart sank continuously. He feared his guess had indeed become a reality. This place was truly a spiritual artifact space, and moreover, it was a spiritual artifact space controlled by Lu Qing. Otherwise, with his cultivation realm, he couldn't possibly manifest the advanced divine skills required for divine soul transformation. Not much, plague old ghost. Didn't you boast earlier that I could not harm you? Now, why don't you guess where you are? Lu Qing looked at the plague gourd leisurely. No need to play tricks. This place is nothing more than another spiritual artifact space. Coldly laughed the plague elder. By now, He knew he couldn't deceive Lu Qing anymore. So naturally, he didn't bother to put on a pretense. Kid, your destiny defies the heavens. You are just in the Qi refining realm, and yet you can control 2 spiritual artifacts. However, it's too strong to last long. Such intense fortune is like a fierce fire meeting oil. Be careful that one day you'll meet an untimely death, falling into a predicament from which there is no recovery. You needn't worry about me, old ghost, Lu Qing said indifferently. Since you've guessed that this is another spiritual artifact space, perhaps you can guess which artifact space this is? No matter what spiritual artifact, it can't possibly contend with my Plague Gourd, declared Plague Elder coldly. Kid, I advise you not to waste any more effort. If you truly want to know about ancient times, consider my proposal. If you release me, I will not only inform you about ancient times but will also impart to you the supreme divine power. In the future, achieving a golden core, stepping into the primordial spirit, and even becoming immortal are all within reach. What grandiose claims you make about becoming immortal and an ancestor, Plague Old Ghost. How come I didn't know you possessed such divine skills? In the times of the righteous immortal sect, you were nothing but a rat that everyone chased after, always only daring to hide in dark places and not to show off. It was only because of that broken gourd of yours that you had some reputation. Now you dare to boast so shamelessly. Truly, you have no shame. Just as Plague Elder was trying to bluff Lu Qing again, a mocking voice echoed around them. Who? Plague Elder was shocked. Someone was so intimately familiar with his background. They must be an entity from the same era. Could it be the person backing Lu Qing? With rapid thought, the Plague Elder came up with a possibility. Then, in the next moment, he saw a magnificent middle-aged man wearing a stunning fire robe and with 2 horns on his head appear before Lu Qing. With this person's arrival, the urgency within the surrounding space escalated to another level. It was as if the king of the space had arrived. You are the artifact spirit of this spiritual artifact space. Recognizing another of his kind, the Plague Elder immediately identified Yan's essence. He felt even more apprehensive. The aura emanating from Yan was much stronger than his own, indicating that this artifact spirit's recovery was much quicker, and its essence was also more formidable. Coupled with Lu Qing, Plague Elder suddenly felt a chill in his heart. What's scared now? Yan seemed to sense Plague Elder's emotions and laughed coldly. Plague Old Ghost, I didn't expect you to be so ruthless. In order to escape the heavenly human 5 decays and survive, you actually possessed the artifact spirit within your life-bound spiritual artifact, managing to live on. However, even though you succeeded in the possession, your true spirit must have suffered a significant loss. Being trapped here now, I fear it won't take long for your true spirit to collapse, leaving you without even the qualification to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Plague Elder's face suddenly changed drastically. His greatest fear was Lu Qing finding out about this, but now Yan had exposed it all. Yet he still feigned calmness and said coldly, Is that so? How could a mere artifact spirit like you know of my supreme divine powers? You say my true spirit is about to collapse? Then just wait and see. After being trapped here by you for centuries, watch if I will fall. Plague Old Ghost, there's no need to put on airs here. I'll ask you one more time. Are you willing to open your heart and spirit and let me imprint my divine soul seal on your true spirit? Lu Qing said coldly. Never think about it, kid. Do you want to subjugate me, a mere primordial spirit that once blew out countless beings like you with a breath, to you in the Qi refinement realm? To think that someone like you would dare to try and refine the true spirit of a primordial spirit great power, truly ignorant of heaven's height and earth's depth. Good. Lu Qing didn't say any more. His figure faded within the spiritual artifact space, leaving behind a statement drifting through. Yan, do it. Refine him to death. Hearing Lu Qing call his name directly, Yan's heart chilled even more. But inexplicably, it couldn't summon any anger but rather felt a swirl of coldness lingering in its heart. Without hesitation, Yan extended a hand. An endless flame spontaneously formed within the spiritual energy space. It transformed into a Lihua dragon, coiling towards the plague gourd. Lihua dragon, you are the leaving fire tripod of the Lihua sect. Recognizing Yan's transformation into the Lihua dragon, Plague Elder finally understood which artifact space he was in. He had not interacted with the Lihua sect during the ancient immortal cultivation era, so he hadn't recognized Yan's essence immediately. But the leaving fire tripod was well known throughout the cultivation world, and its signature move, the all-conquering Lihua dragon, was one of the tripod's hallmarks. Chapter 506. Arrogant first, respectful later, thoroughly refining to death. Kid, where is this place, and what exactly do you want? Plague Elder was taken aback when Lu Qing suddenly appeared, especially since he realized at a glance that the other was a divine soul power illusion. His face changed dramatically, and his heart sank continuously. He feared his guess had indeed become a reality. This place was truly a spiritual artifact space, and moreover, it was a spiritual artifact space controlled by Lu Qing. Otherwise, with his cultivation realm, he couldn't possibly manifest the advanced divine skills required for divine soul transformation. Not much, plague old ghost. Didn't you boast earlier that I could not harm you? Now, why don't you guess where you are? Lu Qing looked at the plague gourd leisurely. No need to play tricks. This place is nothing more than another spiritual artifact space. Coldly laughed the plague elder. By now, he knew he couldn't deceive Lu Qing anymore. So naturally, he didn't bother to put on a pretense. Kid, your destiny defies the heavens. You are just in the Qi refining realm, and yet you can control 2 spiritual artifacts. However, it's too strong to last long. Such intense fortune is like a fierce fire meeting oil. Be careful that one day you'll meet an untimely death, falling into a predicament from which there is no recovery. You needn't worry about me, old ghost, Lu Qing said indifferently. Since you've guessed that this is another spiritual artifact space, perhaps you can guess which artifact space this is? No matter what spiritual artifact, it can't possibly contend with my plague gourd, declared Plague Elder coldly. Kid, I advise you not to waste any more effort. If you truly want to know about ancient times, consider my proposal. If you release me, I will not only inform you about ancient times but will also impart to you the supreme divine power. In the future, achieving a golden core, stepping into the primordial spirit, and even becoming immortal are all within reach. What grandiose claims you make about becoming immortal and an ancestor, plague old ghost. How come I didn't know you possessed such divine skills? In the times of the righteous immortal sect, you were nothing but a rat that everyone chased after, always only daring to hide in dark places and not to show off. It was only because of that broken gourd of yours that you had some reputation. Now you dare to boast so shamelessly. Truly, you have no shame. Just as Plague Elder was trying to bluff Lu Qing again, a mocking voice echoed around them. Who? Plague Elder was shocked. Someone was so intimately familiar with his background. They must be an entity from the same era. Could it be the person backing Lu Qing? With rapid thought, the Plague Elder came up with a possibility. Then, in the next moment, he saw a magnificent middle-aged man wearing a stunning fire robe and with 2 horns on his head appear before Lu Qing. With this person's arrival, the urgency within the surrounding space escalated to another level. It was as if the king of the space had arrived. You are the artifact spirit of this spiritual artifact space. Recognizing another of his kind, the Plague Elder immediately identified Yan's essence. He felt even more apprehensive. The aura emanating from Yan was much stronger than his own, indicating that this artifact spirit's recovery was much quicker, and its essence was also more formidable. Coupled with Lu Qing, Plague Elder suddenly felt a chill in his heart. What's scared now? Yan seemed to sense Plague Elder's emotions and laughed coldly. Plague old ghost, I didn't expect you to be so ruthless. In order to escape the heavenly human 5 decays and survive, you actually possessed the artifact spirit within your life-bound spiritual artifact, managing to live on. However, even though you succeeded in the possession, your true spirit must have suffered a significant loss. Being trapped here now, I fear it won't take long for your true spirit to collapse. leaving you without even the qualification to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Plague Elder's face suddenly changed drastically. His greatest fear was Lu Qing finding out about this, but now Yen had exposed it all. Yet he still feigned calmness and said coldly, "Is that so? How could a mere artifact spirit like you know of my supreme divine powers? You say my true spirit is about to collapse? Then just wait and see. After being trapped here by you for centuries, watch if I will fall. Plague old ghost, there's no need to put on airs here. I'll ask you one more time. Are you willing to open your heart and spirit and let me imprint my divine soul seal on your true spirit?" Lu Qing said coldly. "Never think about it, kid. Do you want to subjugate me, a mere primordial spirit that once blew out countless beings like you with a breath, to you in the Qi refinement realm? To think that someone like you would dare to try and refine the true spirit of a primordial spirit great power, truly ignorant of heaven's height and earth's depth." Good. Lu Qing didn't say any more. His figure faded within the spiritual artifact space, leaving behind a statement drifting through. "Yen, do it. Refine him to death." Hearing Lu Qing call his name directly, Yan's heart chilled even more. But inexplicably, it couldn't summon any anger but rather felt a swirl of coldness lingering in its heart. Without hesitation, Yen extended a hand. An endless flame spontaneously formed within the spiritual energy space. It transformed into a Li Hua dragon, coiling towards the plague gourd. Li Hua dragon, you are the leaving fire tripod of the Li Hua sect. Recognizing Yan's transformation into the Li Hua dragon, Plague Elder finally understood which artifact space he was in. He had not interacted with the Li Hua sect during the ancient immortal cultivation era, so he hadn't recognized Yan's essence immediately. But the leaving fire tripod was well known throughout the cultivation world, and its signature move, the all-conquering Li Hua dragon, was one of the tripod's hallmarks. Chapter 507. Seeing the form Yen had transformed into, Plague Elder knew he had fallen into the trap of this spiritual artifact. At that moment, Plague Elder felt his liver tremble. The leaving fire tripod was the sect spirit artifact of the Li Hua sect, and its grade had reached that of a middle-grade spiritual device. It was one grade higher than his own plague gourd. Most importantly, the leaving fire tripod was famously adept at refinement, especially in artifact refining and alchemy. Originally, it was with this very tripod that the Li Hua sect could continuously produce high-grade magical treasures and elixirs, securing a place for itself in the cultivation world. Now finding himself within this cursed spiritual artifact space, it was the worst possible news for Plague Elder. If he had known earlier, he would not have provoked that kid so. A trace of regret passed through Plague Elder's heart. Unfortunately, regret was pointless now, as the Li Hua dragon, which Yen had transformed into, coiled around him. He had no choice but to shrink back, hiding in the deepest part of the plague gourd, hoping that his own spiritual artifact would withstand the leaving fire tripod's refinement. The plague gourd was fortuitously made by fusing a piece of exotic iron he had found by chance. It possessed strange abilities that even he couldn't fully comprehend. Perhaps it could protect his every aspect. Powerful forces of fire surrounded the plague gourd, with Yen, in the form of the Li Hua dragon, tightly entwined around the gourd. However, after half an hour, the plague gourd showed not the slightest change, as if the flames around it simply did not exist. How is this possible? Doubt flashed in Yen's eyes, although it was not fully healed, and its might was nowhere near its peak. The plague gourd in front of it was clearly even more damaged. Yet it, being a middle-grade spiritual device, could not refine it. This damn gourd is odd. Just as this thought flashed across Yen's mind, Lu Qing's voice came from above. "How goes it, Yen Sr.?" A slight embarrassment crossed Yen's eyes, but it reported truthfully, "This plague gourd seems somewhat peculiar. I cannot refine it for the moment." "What should we do then?" There was no hint of emotion in Lu Qing's voice. However, Yen inexplicably felt tension. After some thought, it said, "My true spirit has not fully recovered. My available power is limited. In the short term, It's likely difficult to affect this plague gourd. I need your help. Okay. As soon as Lu Qing heard, he immediately agreed. I will assist with the great array within this manner to refine this old ghost to death. No sooner had the words left his mouth than Yen felt a strong array power bolstering the leaving fire tripod. At the same time, a vast surge of spiritual energy flooded into the tripod. It immediately revitalized in spirit, swallowing up all the spiritual energy unapologetically. The next moment, its form in the spiritual artifact space swelled immensely. It swallowed the plague gourd whole, its body coiling as endless fiery power penetrated into the gourd. The plague elder, who had hidden deep within the gourd, was secretly pleased that Yen couldn't handle him, never expecting Yen's aura to suddenly surge more than tenfold. His eyes widened in disbelief. How can this be? At the same time, with frantic thoughts, he mobilized the remainder of his divine soul power, urging the plague gourd's power to resist. But all these efforts were in vain as Yen relentlessly refined it. White flames seeped persistently into the plague gourd, destroying the restrictions painstakingly set by the plague elder layer by layer, burning away all the gray plague chi, and slowly spreading towards the depths of the gourd. No matter how hard the plague elder tried, he could not stop it.
No.
As the white flames steadily encroached upon the space where his true spirit lay hidden, Plague Elder showed a look of terror. His divine soul sent out violent fluctuations. Young master, I yield. I am willing to release my true spirit and submit to you. The white flames about to reach the Plague Elder's true spirit instantly stopped. Yen also looked up towards the high skies. The Plague Elder breathed a sigh of relief. However, the next moment, Lu Qing's indifferent voice came from above. Too late, Plague Elder. I gave you a chance, but you did not treasure it. Yen, refine him for me. This statement not only caused Yen to be stunned, but the Plague Elder was also greatly shocked. He hurriedly shouted, Master, the past was all a misunderstanding. It was my loose tongue. I shouldn't have provoked you like that. I realize my mistake. Please spare me this once, Master. From now on, I will serve you with all my heart and toil like a dog or a horse. In order to save his life, the Plague Elder didn't even care for his own dignity. Immediately addressing Lu Qing as Master and referring to himself as an old slave. His abjectly fawning attitude left Yen completely dumbfounded. It knew that these people of the demon path were always cunning and deceitful, as well as shamelessly vile. But it hadn't expected that a once great primordial spirit cultivator, desperate to live, could be so utterly shameless. Yet what Yen found even more unexpected was that, facing such a humiliating plea for mercy from the Plague Elder, Lu Qing still showed no compassion. He simply said indifferently, Yen, did you not hear what I said? Refine him. Hearing Lu Qing's tone grow even sterner, Yen realized that he was truly intent on refining the Plague Elder to death, not merely threatening him in order to bring him to submission. Sensing Lu Qing's dissatisfaction, Yen dared not delay any further, and immediately reignited the flames, spreading them towards the Plague Elder.
No.
Don't do this. The Plague Elder couldn't believe that even after he had lowered himself so much, Lu Qing still wanted to refine him to death. He shouted desperately, Master, I truly realize my error. Please give me another chance to become your most loyal servant. Furthermore, if you refine me to death, the Plague Gourd's grade will drop and it will become a mere treasure. That would be a great loss for you, Master. Please reconsider. Sadly, his plea went unanswered by Lu Qing. Amidst Lu Qing's silence, Yen propelled the white flames that ultimately breached the space where the Plague Elder was hiding. As he watched the white flames with their terrifying aura inch closer to his true spirit, the Plague Elder finally despaired. A look of madness appeared on his face. You little beast, if you want me dead, let's all die together. With that, his mind raced, attempting to detonate the core restriction of the Plague Gourd, to self-destruct the spiritual artifact and perish alongside Lu Qing. However, when his will seeped into the core restriction, he found himself utterly unable to activate the Plague Gourd's power. Thinking of self-destructing? Yan's grand voice echoed deep within the gourd. Plague Elder, had you detonated the restriction right from the start, perhaps I wouldn't have been able to stop you. But you are too afraid to die, only thinking of self-destructing as my flames are about to refine you to death. Do you truly think my power is just for show? As he spoke, the numerous white flames that had penetrated the depths of the gourd lunged towards the Plague Elder's true spirit. No! The already weakened true spirit of the Plague Elder could not withstand the terrifying flames that contained a sliver of rule power. Without even a bit of strength left to resist, he was instantly incinerated, utterly reduced to nothingness. After refining the Plague Elder's true spirit to death, Yen immediately spat out the Plague Gourd from its body and withdrew all the flames. Without the artifact spirit's restraint, the Plague Gourd's grade had dropped. Had it not taken back its power, the spiritual artifact might have been completely destroyed. Lu Qing's figure appeared once again in the spiritual artifact space. Young Master, this is the Plague Gourd left behind by the Plague Elder. Yen handed the Plague Gourd to Lu Qing, even changing the way it addressed him, no longer calling Lu Qing boy. Lu Qing took the gourd, which was no longer half a person tall, but had shrunk to the size of a palm, small enough to be held in one hand. Young Master, there seems to be something peculiar about this gourd. Even my flames couldn't affect it for a moment. There might be some other mystery to it. Chapter 508. Chaos Divine Iron, Lifebound Treasure Embryo, The Tremor of Suspended Mountain. Yen was somewhat curious about the Plague Gourd. Logically speaking, a heavily damaged low-grade spirit artifact that had not recognized a master should not have been able to resist his refinement. Yet previously, despite exhausting all his efforts, he couldn't refine the gourd at all. If it weren't for Lu Qing's assistance later with the array power in the chamber, he would have really lost face. Thus, he remained quite curious about the Plague Gourd. However, without Lu Qing's consent, he couldn't conduct a thorough investigation. By now, Yen had also realized the reason Lu Qing was so ruthless toward the Plague Elder, not even giving him a chance to beg for mercy, was to not risk a downgrade of the Plague Gourd, but to refine him to death. It was certainly because that old ghost had repeatedly disrespected him, scoffing and jeering. But more so, it was a warning to him. If he ever thought to bargain with Lu Qing frequently in the future, his fate would not be much better than that of the Plague Elder. Realizing Lu Qing's ruthlessness, Yen couldn't help but change his attitude. He no longer looked down upon this junior. He even felt somewhat glad that he had agreed to Lu Qing's proposal earlier. Otherwise, given this young man's vindictiveness, his own fate could have been very bleak. However, although his attitude had changed, for Yen to suddenly address Lu Qing as his master was impossible, as he couldn't swallow his pride. Something strange. Lu Qing gazed at the gourd, but now he was merely a wisp of divine soul consciousness and couldn't use his superpower to see through the gourd. At the thought, his divine soul consciousness returned to his physical body. With a gesture, the leaving fire tripod expelled the Plague Gourd, which fell into Lu Qing's hands. He then activated his ability and looked towards the gourd. After a while, a faint purple light of superpower emerged from above the gourd. Several lines of text floated out. Purple light. Lu Qing was slightly startled. According to Yen, the grade of the Plague Gourd had fallen, and it was no longer a spirit artifact. Yet it still showed purple light. He hastily looked at the lines of text. And then, he saw that the information displayed by the Plague Gourd this time was different from what he had seen before. Treasure Gourd. Damaged top-grade treasure. Ancient Immortal Cultivation Era Evil Path Powerhouse Plague Elder's Lifebound Magical Treasure. Originally a spirit artifact, but turned into a top-grade treasure after being refined by the Leaving Fire Tripod art, and having its restrictions destroyed by the artifact spirit transformed from the Plague Elder. Now that the artifact spirit has perished and the restrictions are destroyed, the inner evil chi has been fully purified. It no longer contains the power of the evil path, becoming an ordinary magical treasure. During the ancient immortal cultivation era, while the Plague Elder was refining this treasure, he inadvertently fused it with a piece of Chaos Divine Iron, which, by a serendipitous event, gave birth to an artifact spirit, turning it into a spirit artifact. Chaos Divine Iron? Upon finishing reading the information on the gourd, Lu Qing's eyes revealed an extremely excited expression. He had never expected that the plague gourd once had Chaos Divine Iron, a primary material blended into it by the Plague Elder. At Li Huasek's lineage records, Chaos Divine Iron was known to be even more precious than Outer Heaven Fallen Iron. It was a divine material that any cultivator dreamed of for artifact refining. That Plague Elder was indeed extremely fortunate to have once obtained a piece. Young Master, did you say this gourd contains Chaos Divine Iron? Yan, upon hearing Lu Qing's words, was equally astounded. Indeed, that Plague Elder, when he initially refined this gourd, somehow managed to blend a piece of Chaos Divine Iron into it. Perhaps that is why you couldn't refine it earlier. What other method could it be? The Plague Elder's refining methods were crude. There wasn't any clever technique used. It's purely because of the Chaos Divine Iron's own mystical properties that it successfully fused into the gourd. Yen realized after being shocked for a long while. I was puzzled earlier. The refining techniques in the plague gourd were not ingenious, and the restrictions were very crude as well. The Plague Elder wasn't even famously known for his artifact refining skills. But he, at the initial realm of primordial spirit, was able to refine a spirit artifact that perfectly suited him. It turns out it was all because he once got a piece of Chaos Divine Iron. Yen, as the sect spirit artifact of Li Hua sect, had refined countless magical treasure elixirs. It itself could be considered a grandmaster-level existence in artifact refining and alchemy. Earlier, when it used the power of Li Fire to invade the plague gourd, it discovered. The refining techniques inside the plague gourd were not sophisticated. In its view, they were even considered crude. Logically, such crude artifact refining techniques should not have been able to nurture an artifact spirit, transforming it into a spirit artifact. Now it realized it was all because the foundation was too good. The gourd had fused with a piece of Chaos Divine Iron. Young Master, this is a great opportunity. Yen congratulated Lu Qing. This gourd has fused with Chaos Divine Iron. Its foundation is excellent, and its potential is infinite. It is the best life-bound treasure embryo. Now that the restrictions placed in the gourd by the Plague Elder have been almost entirely destroyed by me, and the plague and disease chi has been swept away, it is the perfect time to refine it into your life-bound magical treasure. Life-bound magical treasure? Lu Qing looked at the gray gourd in his hand. Indeed, this gourd contains Chaos Divine Iron, accommodating all things, suitable for any cultivator. The Plague Elder probably did not recognize its value, nor understood the wonder of Chaos Divine Iron. Chapter 509. It would be a travesty to refine it into a treasure solely for plague chi, which could only be used on the evil path. Young Master, your studies are quite diverse. This gourd is indeed the most suitable life-bound magical treasure for you. Lu Qing looked at the gourd, lost in thought. He had the legacy of the Li Hua sect and naturally knew some of the mysterious properties of Chaos Divine Iron. He understood that what Yen had said was no falsehood. This gourd, which had melded with Chaos Divine Iron, was highly malleable and indeed suited him very well. After all, as Yen had said, his studies were too varied, especially since he had also cultivated the 5 elements body refining technique and possessed 5 elements spiritual power. A single attribute, or even multiple attributes of magical treasures, were indeed unsuitable as life-bound magical treasures. But this gourd, enriched with Chaos Divine Iron, was inclusive of all things and perfectly complemented his cultivation techniques. Good. I will refine it into my own life-bound magical treasure. However, I fear that this process might still require your help. Yen. Lu Qing pondered for a moment and then made his decision. That's only natural. Yen revealed a smile, for refining magical treasure was its forte. Lu Qing immediately made a spell gesture, which opened the leaving fire tripod and tossed the gray gourd into it. A flame surged upwards and swallowed the gourd. Then, Lu Qing's heart and spirit entered the leaving fire tripod, and along with Yen, they stimulated the tripod's fire to purify the gourd. This step was essential to entirely eliminate the restrictions the Plague Elder had once refined into the gourd to prevent future problems. Without the power of an artifact spirit, the few residual restrictions within the gourd were practically ineffective against the flames of the leaving fire tripod. They were quickly completely refined away, leaving no trace. After thoroughly purifying the inside and out of the gourd, ensuring there were no oversights, Lu Qing began to stimulate the power of the leaving fire tripod, refining his own restrictions into the gourd. Watching Lu Qing skillfully refine restrictions into the gourd, Yen was immensely shocked on the side. It discovered that Lu Qing was using a secret artifact refining technique uniquely belonging to the Lihua sect. And therefore, Lu Qing could quite easily mobilize the power of Li Fire within the tripod for the gourd's refinement. Where exactly did this young man obtain the legacy of the Lihua sect? Could it be that, after that battle all those years ago, a supreme elder had indeed miraculously escaped and left the legacy elsewhere? Yen was both shocked and puzzled. Back in that battle, the Lihua sect had fought desperately against the enemy. Eventually, nearly all the sect's experts perished, including several supreme elders and the sect master. Only the young sect master, along with the heavily damaged Yen, under the desperate protection of other elders, managed to barely escape and hid in a secret base built by the Lihua sect. But not long after reaching this secret land, the young sect master also succumbed due to the severe injuries to his divine soul and was unable to recover. Finally, after leaving behind most of the Lihua sect's legacy inside the leaving fire tripod, he passed away. Logically speaking, besides it, no other being should know the various core cultivation techniques of the Lihua sect. Where then did Lu Qing learn this authentic Lihua sect artifact refining technique? Yen was utterly baffled. It never thought that there would be such a strange existence as Lu Qing in the world. Without instruction, he could, relying on his superpower, directly download and simulate all the legacies left by the former young sect master of the Lihua sect. Otherwise, its fear of Lu Qing would skyrocket. While Lu Qing was in the Jade Cave, focused on refining his life-bound magical treasure, in an indescribably mysterious land, upon an immense mountain floating in midair, there lay a majestic and grand monastery. Inside, within the most majestic and solemn great heroic treasure hall, many monks clad in kasaya robes stood. The one leading, clad in a red kasaya, looked sternly at a kneeling young monk. "Say it again, what happened in the Soul Tower?" The kneeling young monk cried. Reporting to the great elder, "Today when I went to clean the Soul Tower, I discovered that the soul lamps of Grandmaster Xianming and Grandmaster Xiannu had both extinguished." Upon hearing this, the great elder in the red kasaya swayed slightly, nearly unable to remain standing. The surrounding monks were even more shocked, almost doubting whether they had heard wrong. When a person dies, their lamp extinguishes. The extinguishing of a soul lamp meant that Elder Xianming and the others had indeed perished. Fortunately, the great elder had good self-control, and he quickly calmed down. In a grave voice, he asked, "What exactly is going on? Tell me the truth." "Yes." The young monk stopped crying and sobbed. "Today it was my turn to clean the Soul Tower in the temple. I hadn't noticed anything initially, but when I was cleaning the floor where the soul lamps are enshrined, I looked up and saw that Grandmaster Xuanming's soul lamp had already extinguished. Not only that, even Grandmaster Xiannu and many other elders and senior brothers who had gone out this time, their soul lamps had all extinguished too." The young monk's voice was filled with grief, and his heart was filled with immense fear, because this cleaning was actually done out of laziness. He was supposed to clean the Soul Tower 3 days ago, but he had been lazy for a few days because of some matters. After all, the Soul Tower was typically seldom visited. And with an array protecting it, it was naturally quite clean, so even if it wasn't cleaned for 10 days or half a month, hardly any dust would accumulate. In the past, he often skipped cleaning without encountering any issues. Who knew that this time such a disaster would occur? The young monk was extremely uneasy in his heart, fearing how the great elder would punish him if he found out about his laziness. Fortunately, the news brought by the young monk was too shocking, causing the monks not to notice the slight oddity on his face. "Quick! Go to the Soul Tower immediately!" The great elder, despite his large and rotund body, moved with incredible agility. In an instant, he had disappeared within the great hall. The other monks also quickly employed their movement techniques and hurried towards the Soul Tower. In a blink of an eye, only the young monk was left, drenched in cold sweat, quietly getting up from the ground and running out of the hall. Before long, the great elder and his people had already arrived inside the Soul Tower. Looking at the row of extinguished soul lamps, their faces turned ashen, their eyes filled with grief and anger, for they sensed that the divine soul aura left by Brother Xianming and the others had indeed completely dissipated. Who could it be, so audacious as to dare to harm the people of our suspended mountain? Even with the great elder's self-control, amidst his grief and anger, he also felt a chill in his limbs. It was known that Brother Xianming had taken several temple treasures with him on this trip, even including the demon-subduing Vajra pestle. With those treasures, combined with several other brothers, in an outside world where the spiritual energy had just recovered, no one should have been able to harm them. Yet now, their soul lamps have all been extinguished. Just how powerful is the person who killed them? Could it be those 3 old immortals atop Holy Mountain who interfered? Or was it someone from the other secret lands? The great elder instinctively felt a crisis arising from within his heart. Could it be that some conspiracy was specifically targeting their suspended mountain? No matter who did this, we must investigate thoroughly. Great elder, we cannot let this matter rest. A monk shouted indignantly. Indeed, no one has dared to harm our people of Suspended Mountain in tens of thousands of years. We must find out who did this. After finding out, even if it was someone from the secret lands, they must pay a blood debt. The monks were collectively incensed. Many of the monks who had gone out had deep relationships with them here. Some were even the favored disciples of some of those present. And now they had died inexplicably in the outside world. How could they accept this? The great elder looked at the angry faces of the monks and nodded immediately. This matter certainly needs thorough investigation. Xianyi, go to the Wujin building and have them send people out to find out exactly what is happening. I need to go up the mountain and report this to the abbot. Chapter 510 Suspended Mountains Move, Magical Treasure Takes Shape. At the highest point of Suspended Mountain there was a small temple. Compared to the many splendid and majestic temples halfway up the mountain, this little temple seemed particularly modest. Mud walls and wooden pillars, mottled and weathered, were filled with the traces of time. There were only a few monks' quarters, which seemingly could only accommodate 3 to 5 people. The great elder arrived here, his face solemn. He respectfully said, "Abbot, esteemed supreme elders, Xianyi has important matters to see you about." There was not a stir of movement from inside the little temple. The great elder did not show any displeasure. His face still very respectful. He waited patiently. After about half a quarter of an hour, a serene voice finally drifted from inside. "Come in." Then, with a creak, the door of the little temple opened by itself, without any wind. The great elder bowed respectfully before carefully walking inside. He eventually stopped in the empty courtyard and waited quietly. "What is the matter?" After a while, that voice drifted slowly again, seemingly from nowhere. At the same time, the great elder felt several invisible gazes falling upon him. He dared not dally and hastily said, "Abbot, a while ago, wasn't Xianming sent by the monastery, along with others, to Central State to compete for the opportunities bestowed by fate? But today, the novice responsible for cleaning the Soul Tower found that Xianming and the other soul lamps have all been extinguished. I fear they may have perished in the outside world. This is a matter of great significance. I did not dare to make decisions on my own and have especially come to seek guidance from the abbot and the esteemed supreme elders on how to proceed. Upon hearing this, the surroundings fell into a moment of silence. But the great elder clearly felt the gazes on his body grow heavier. His facial expression remained unchanged, but the pressure inside him gradually mounted. After a long pause, the serene voice spoke again. Indeed, I have just calculated a bit, and their karma has dissipated. Indeed, they have all perished. Then, Abbot, can you calculate who killed Xianming and the others? The great elder's spirits lifted, and he asked eagerly. I cannot. Though the heavenly secrets have cleared up somewhat as the rules of the outside world have initially been established, it is still not easy to divine. Even with the help of the Heart Temple's power to surmise the karma of Xianming and the others, we have reached our limit. And the ones who acted to kill Xianming and the others are not ordinary individuals. They carry items that shield against heavenly secrets, making it even harder to divine. The serene voice said unhurriedly, as if the demise of Xianming and the others hadn't caused even the slightest ripple in his emotions. The great elder felt a wave of disappointment but still said, Then, Abbot, in your view regarding the death of Xianming and the others, was it the handiwork of those three from Holy Mountain, or could it have been the work of others from the three great secret places? I worry that there may be a conspiracy against us embedded within. It is difficult to conjecture, said the serene voice. Xianming and the others carried treasures like the Vajra pestle. Logically, there should be few in the outside world who could harm them. But those three Saint Masters atop Holy Mountain are bound by the constraints of Holy Mountain and would not act rashly. So, the most likely possibility would be individuals from the other three great secret places? The great elder quickly asked. Heavenly secrets are unclear. Everything is difficult to say. You should first dispatch someone to investigate further. I have already ordered Xian Yi to go to Wujin Building and have them send out people to investigate. That will do. Suspended Mountain has sheltered Wujin Building for so long. It is time for them to prove their worth. But, Abbot, since the changes in heaven and earth and the recovery of spiritual energy, there seem to have been some movements at Wujin Building, and they are not very honest, the great elder said. No matter, they are just a bunch of shady mice that can't be put on stage. In a few days, they will come to realize the reality. You may go now, said the serene voice nonchalantly. Yes, I take my leave. The great elder felt a chill in his heart, knowing that the abbot must have already made a decision. He did not dare to inquire further, only responding in a low voice and slowly exiting the little temple. Once the great elder had left, the temple returned to tranquility. After a long time, the serene voice slowly said, Esteemed elders, what are your thoughts on the matter relayed by Xian Yi? Over 10 breaths later, a hoarse voice replied, We should watch and wait. For now, the most important thing for us is to consolidate our cultivation and wait for the day when heaven and earth rules are fully stabilized. To be able to cross the tribulation and form the golden core at the first opportunity, to return to the golden core realm. At that time, whether it's a hidden conspiracy or a blatant one, it will be of no concern. Indeed, no matter how much of a commotion they are making outside, it's nothing but trivial in the end. Once we restore our cultivation, we can easily crush them with a mere flick of the hand. As long as we can restore our cultivation before those old immortals in the other secret lands, all the advantages and fortunes will belong to Suspended Mountain, said two other voices in agreement. Good, the elders speak wisely. Then let us continue to observe and let Xian Yi and the others stir things up for now, said the gentle voice, indifferently. The temple fell into silence once more, with no one speaking for a long time. When the great elder left the small temple, at the gate of Suspended Mountain's foothill, a figure, commanding a stream of light, flew down towards the land below the mountain. After a while, he descended in front of a fortress, gestured with his hand, and the light under his feet quickly shrank and fell into his palm. It was, in fact, a small boat transformed from a green bamboo leaf. It was none other than Xian Yi, tasked with going to Wujin Building. Master Xian Yi, what brings you to our humble place? Xian Yi's showy arrival had been noticed by the people in the fortress long before. Chapter 511. Someone immediately came out, fawningly greeting him with respect. No need for idle chit-chat. Where is your leader? Take me to see him. Xian Yi looked disdainfully at the somewhat greasy fatty before him and spoke indifferently. He had always looked down upon this group of rats that only knew how to hide in the shadows. He wondered why the one presiding over them had initially chosen to protect these creatures. Our leader is inside. Please follow me. The greasy fatty seemed to be oblivious to Xian Yi's strong disdain, continuing to speak obsequiously. Then lead the way. Xian Yi followed the greasy fatty into the village, and couldn't help but frown after a short walk. The village was filled with skeletons and animal mummies, giving off a terrifyingly strange aura. Many cold eyes peeked out from the dark houses around, making Xian Yi feel quite uncomfortable. Master Xian Yi, what's wrong? The greasy fatty saw that Xian Yi had stopped and quickly asked. Humph! Xian Yi snorted coldly, and his kasaya suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light. The next moment, suppressed screams came from the dark houses to both sides. The greasy fatty's face changed drastically and he cursed. You blind fools! Do you think you're worthy of gazing directly at Master Xian Yi? I'll deal with you later. Then he returned to bowing and nodding to Xian Yi. Master Xian Yi, please don't bother with these blind things. I'll punish them later. Don't let this delay your important matters. Xian Yi said nothing, continuing forward with an expressionless face. With his stature, a slight punishment was enough. He was not about to argue with a bunch of rats. After all, he still needed to use these rats to do his bidding. Following the greasy fatty, Xian Yi finally arrived in front of a tall wooden tower. Master Xian Yi, our leader is inside, waiting to welcome you. The greasy fatty gestured with his hands, but did not move forward. Xian Yi, fearless, stepped into the tower. However, he couldn't help feeling dissatisfied. A dark rat leader, who could barely survive under the protection of their suspended mountain, dared to put on airs in front of him. If it wasn't that he still needed these rats to do something, he would have lashed out already. Entering the tower, Xian Yi saw a black silhouette standing with its back to him, hands behind its back. Its presence was faint and elusive, making it hard for even Xian Yi to discern whether the person was real or an illusion. His heart tightened, realizing that the person before him was of a higher cultivation realm. The black silhouette was looking at a painting on the wall. The painting depicted a massive black demon holding double forks, like a king from the netherworld, exuding a mysterious and strange aura. It's rare for a distinguished guest from the heavens to visit. Wuxing has failed to meet you from afar, and I hope Master Xian Yi will forgive me. The black silhouette turned around, revealing a radiant smile to Xian Yi. Wuxing, cut the chatter. I'm here on business that I need you to handle. Although he felt the higher cultivation realm of the black silhouette, Xian Yi still didn't show much kindness, only speaking coldly. May I know what matter from the mountain requires the assistance of us lowly people? The black silhouette still smiled, seemingly indifferent to Xian Yi's attitude. A while back, my brothers Shenming and Shen Nu, along with some disciples and some from your Wujin building, went to the outside world to compete for fortunes. Now there has been an accident and they are missing. I need your Wujin building to send more people out to ascertain the whereabouts of brother Shenming and the others, and to find out what major events have occurred in the outside world in recent days. Brother Shenming and the others are missing? The black silhouette seemed surprised, apparently unaware that Xian Yi had come for such a matter. Could it be that there was a power in the world daring to oppose Suspended Mountain? Indeed, not just brother Shenming and the others, but also those Wujin building disciples who followed are without any news. So when you send people out this time, you don't need to do too much. Just find the whereabouts of brother Shenming and the rest. A chilling realization dawned upon the black silhouette. Judging from Xian Yi's tone, it seemed that Shenming and the others were likely to be in a dire situation. He suddenly grasped the seriousness of the matter. Rest assured, Master Xian Yi, I will arrange for people immediately. Xian Yi nodded. After you've selected the people, have them wait by the boundary gate. Someone will send them out when the time comes. Remember, upon leaving, the priority is to ascertain the whereabouts of Shenming brother and the others. Do not engage in any unnecessary affairs, or you will bear the consequences. Having said this, Xianyi turned and walked out of the tower. Led by a greasy fat man, he headed out of the stockade, as if staying any longer would be a desecration to him. Standing in front of the tower, watching Xianyi's departing figure, a black shadow in his eyes revealed an indescribable expression. Suddenly, a strange figure appeared beside him. Tower Master, it seems that Suspended Mountain is paying us less and less regard. For a mere Qi refining minor success to strut around in Wujin building and disrespect you, people must bow under the eaves. What can we do? The Black Shadow sighed. They are esteemed disciples of Suspended Mountain. Any of those old monsters on the mountain could crush us with just a finger. Not to mention that they hold the keys to this realm's entrances and exits. If you were them, you would also be arrogant. The strange figure fell silent, because he knew that what the Tower Master was saying was the truth. After a while, he said, "Then Tower Master, what do you think about what Xianyi just said? Is it really possible that someone dared to strike against the people of the Suspended Mountain? Could it be the people from the other 3 great secret places? Who knows, but clearly, the changes in the outside world are far beyond our expectations. Even Suspended Mountain cannot fully control the situation, and this, for us, is an opportunity." The strange figure's spirit lifted. "Tower Master, are you saying? This time you are in charge of leading the team out. Remember, there's no hurry to come back. This is a rare opportunity to gather information from the outside world. Make sure to seize it. Once the situation in the outside world is clear, it won't be too late to return." The Black Shadow began to give instructions. "Yes, I understand," said the strange figure respectfully. "Go, you choose the personnel yourself, pick the clever ones. This may be our only chance to break free from the control of Suspended Mountain." Lu Qing knew nothing about what was happening in the secret land of Suspended Mountain. At this moment, he was focusing his efforts, invoking the power of the Leaving Fire tripod, refining his own unique restriction inside a gray gourd. And it had reached the final stage. As the last restriction was set, the gourd suddenly emitted a burst of dull gray light. This gray light was different from the deathly plague gray light of the Plague Elder. It was filled with a mysterious aura, encompassing and evolving all things. As the gray light slowly receded, the Leaving Fire tripod spat out the gourd, which landed in Lu Qing's hand. This one has truly mastered the secret artifact refining techniques of Li Hua sect. Yan, who had been watching Lu Qing refine the gray gourd from beginning to end, was now certain that Lu Qing had truly inherited the artifact refining true teachings of Li Hua sect. And he had also reached a very profound realm. In terms of refining techniques alone, even when compared to some of the true disciples of Li Hua sect in the past, he was not inferior. Congratulations, young master, on successfully refining the magical treasure. Seeing the gourd land in Lu Qing's hands, Yan immediately offered his congratulations. It's just a preliminary refinement, far from finished. Lu Qing, however, shook his head, his face showing no pride. His cultivation was still too weak after all. Even with the power of the Leaving Fire tripod, he had only barely managed to refine a few layers of restrictions into the gourd. So at present, this gourd magical treasure was in its infancy. To fully refine it was still a long way off. He would need to advance his cultivation further to continue perfecting the refinement. Nevertheless, even though it was only a prototype, Lu Qing could feel the extraordinariness of the gourd in his hand. He activated his superpower, peering into the gourd. Chapter 512 5 Elements Gourd, The Secret of Ancient Times. The Magic Treasure Gourd. A top-grade treasure in its embryonic form, with boundless potential. Originally crafted as an evil path magical treasure by the Plague Elder, a cultivator of the primordial spirit, it was later purified of its restrictions and recrafted into the embryonic form of a magical treasure. This treasure contains chaos divine iron, capable of containing all things, accommodating the power of any attribute. This treasure has been refined with multiple attribute restrictions, embodying the fullness of the 5 elements, forming a cycle within itself, indescribably wondrous. Upon seeing the purple superpower light emerging on the gourd and those lines of information, Lu Qing had a satisfied smile on his face. This was his first official attempt at artifact refining. Although he had already simulated and contemplated it many times using his superpower, to succeed on the first try without any mishaps was still a cause for happiness. From now on, you shall be called the 5 Elements Gourd. After naming the magical treasure in hand, Lu Qing tossed the gourd, allowing it to hover in front of him, and he sprayed a mouthful of life-bound essence upon it. After the restrictions of the magical treasure were well refined, the next step was the most important one, recognizing the master. And the recognition of a life-bound magical treasure was much more complex than that of ordinary treasures. It required a continuous and prolonged infusion of life-bound essence and divine soul power to make the magical treasure fuse with his heart and spirit, becoming one with him, responsive as his own limbs. When further progress was made, it would involve nurturing a certain spiritual nature with his own essence chi soul, enlightening an artifact spirit, allowing it to be promoted to a spiritual artifact. The reason why the Plague Elder could so easily abandon his body and take possession of the artifact spirit was precisely because the artifact spirit of the Plague Gourd was inherently from the same origin as him. Otherwise, changing from a human body to a magical treasure while still preserving the true spirit would not be so simple. Young Master is cultivating the 5 elements body refining technique, and has even reached the realm of body shining. Yan, noticing the life-bound essence exhaled by Lu Qing and seeing his body shine momentarily with the essence of the 5 elements amid his cultivation, was immediately surprised. Since Lu Qing had refined the leaving fire tripod, he had put its restrictions on lockdown. Thus, Yan knew very little about Lu Qing, not even the cultivation technique he was practicing. Previously, when Lu Qing helped refine the Plague Elder to death, he had activated the power of this cave's array and had not used his own spiritual energy. So it was only now that Yan realized that Lu Qing was cultivating the 5 elements body refining technique, a technique from the ancient immortal cultivation era, which was almost unpracticed by anyone. Are you really cultivating this technique? Young Master, what are you thinking? Could it be, among the cultivational inheritances of the Li Hua sect, this was the only technique? Or does he not know the flaws of this technique? Yan was puzzled. The 5 elements body refining technique was not regarded as an exceedingly profound technique. Not only was the speed of cultivation slow, but its upper limit was not very high. Even the cultivator who created this technique only achieved the golden core realm perfection at most. Lu Qing's decision to cultivate this technique was beyond its expectations. However, Yan also knew that now was not the time to ask, so it just quietly watched Lu Qing refining the magical treasure. As Lu Qing spurted out mouthful after mouthful of life-bound essence, the 5 elements gourd also became thoroughly branded with his mark, refining it into his life-bound magical treasure. Once the branding was complete, the 5 elements gourd turned into a stream of light, merging into his body, and finally settling in the Dan Tian Chi Si. It absorbed all the 5 elements spiritual power in Lu Qing's Dantian, circulated it within itself, and then expelled it. Then it would absorb it again and expel it. As the 5 elements gourd continued to absorb and expel the spiritual power, Lu Qing discovered that with each cycle, the spiritual power in his Dantian became more refined. He was somewhat surprised. The 5 elements body refining technique he was cultivating required him to continuously temper his physical body with his own spiritual power. With the increasing strength of his physical body, the requirements for the refinement level of spiritual power would also increase. Now that the 5 elements gourd could refine his spiritual power, it was equivalent to constantly aiding his cultivation. This could greatly accelerate the speed of his cultivation. Indeed, choosing to refine the 5 elements gourd as my life-bound magical artifact was the right decision. Even just starting the refinement of this treasure has already shown such remarkable effects. Once it is continuously refined and fully shaped into a spiritual artifact later on, the benefits to me will probably be unimaginable. Currently, the Five Elements gourd was merely imbued with a single layer of restriction by Lu Qing. This restriction involved the complete 5 elements, forming a set of 5 elements array. He crafted it by combining the heritage of the Divine Talisman sect and the artifact refining techniques of the Li Hua sect. Ordinarily, just a single layer of restriction would at most craft a magical artifact at a basic level. However, the pedigree of the 5 Elements gourd was simply too good. The Plague Elder had invested all his life's accumulations in refining it as his life-bound magical artifact, and had unintentionally incorporated a piece of the legendary Chaos Divine Iron. This made the 5 Elements gourd rank among the upper tier of treasures based solely on its material capabilities, even without any restrictions. In the future, as long as Lu Qing continued to refine it, imbuing it with restrictions, a day would come when it would transform anew into a spiritual artifact. By then, as the master of the spiritual artifact and also as its life-bound magical artifact, he would undoubtedly receive tremendous benefits. Congratulations, young master, on the successful refinement and acquiring your own life-bound magical artifact. Yan, seeing Lu Qing incorporate the 5 Elements gourd into his body, immediately voiced its congratulations, while also inwardly marveling at how good Lu Qing's fortune was. Chapter 513. Just a mere qi refining realm, yet not only does he possess 2 spiritual artifacts, but now he has even successfully refined a life-bound magical treasure with the potential to become a spiritual artifact. Such fortune, even if placed in the ancient immortal cultivation era, would almost be considered unique. After all, for tens of thousands of years since its creation, there had never been such an outrageous event. It's only a single layer of restriction that's been refined. The path ahead is still long. Lu Qing shook his head and said, however, with his current cultivation, refining a single layer of restriction was already his limit. To continue refining, he would have to wait for a breakthrough in his cultivation. Given the young master's talent, reaching the realm required to refine the second layer of restrictions should not take too long, Yan complimented. But young master, there is something I don't quite understand. May I ask for your insight? What does Senior wish to inquire about? Noticing the change in Yan's attitude, Lu Qing didn't point it out. Instead, he casually asked, I just observed the cultivation technique you are practicing. It seems to be the 5 Elements body refining technique. I wonder why you chose this technique for cultivation. Don't you know its flaws? What flaws does Senior refer to? The 5 Elements body refining technique, involving the cultivation of all 5 elements, takes more than 5 times longer to produce a unit of spiritual power than other methods. This cultivation speed is notoriously slow. Moreover, the upper limit of this technique is not high. The cultivator who created it only managed to reach the Golden Core Perfect realm. He exhausted his lifespan and perished with his path. Are you not aware of these things? Yan asked with a somewhat inexplicable tone. Senior is referring to these flaws? Lu Qing smiled. I am naturally aware of them, but to me, these are not problems. The 5 Elements body refining technique is very suitable for me. It was the technique I carefully selected for my cultivation. There's no need for Senior to worry. He did not disclose why the technique was suitable for him. I see. It appears I've asked an unnecessary question. Upon hearing this, Yan knew that Lu Qing did not want to elaborate. Though curious, Yan did not continue to pry. And now, Yan had gained some understanding of Lu Qing's character as well. Despite his young age, he was meticulous and ruthless, unlikely to do anything that would harm himself. Since he dared to practice this technique, he presumably had something to rely on. Right, Senior Yan, I have always heard you mention the heavenly human 5 decays tribulation, but what exactly is this tribulation? Can you explain it in detail to me? At that moment, Lu Qing also asked. Yan's heart suddenly chilled. Lu Qing had asked him about this matter before, but at that time he had used it as a bargaining chip. Now, as Lu Qing brought it up again, Yen did not dare mention these conditions anymore. Instead, he solemnly replied, "The heavenly human five decays tribulation is essentially the major calamity triggered at the end of the last immortal cultivation era, when the rules of spiritual energy began to weaken and the heaven and earth rules started to change. This great calamity primarily targeted cultivators above the foundation establishment stage. For lower-level cultivators, the impact was not significant. The main issue was that the heaven and earth rules were evolving, and gradually the world could no longer accommodate powerful cultivators. Especially for those with golden core and above, it was all the more true. Even if they did nothing, their cultivation and divine soul would continue to decay under the influence of the heaven and earth rules. You must understand, any powerful cultivator's realm and cultivation are built over long years of hardship. Even their lifespan depends on cultivation to sustain it, so that their true spirit may not perish and they can enjoy a long life. Once their cultivation and divine soul decay to a certain extent, these powerful cultivators will exhibit signs of physical and divine soul decays. At that point, not only will all their cultivation disappear, but even their true spirit will struggle to maintain itself and risk collapse. This is what's known as the heavenly human five decays tribulation. At the end of the cultivation era, all powerful cultivators had to face this world-shaking catastrophe. Now Lu Qing understood why Yen was so shocked earlier when he learned that the pestilence ghost's true spirit was still intact. It turns out that this so-called heavenly human five decays tribulation is something that all powerful cultivators must confront. Does that mean that a magic treasure spirit like Senior doesn't have to face the heavenly human five decays tribulation? Yes, we artifact spirits do possess true spirits, but as the spirits of magical treasures, we lack physical bodies and do not succumb to decay. Hence, the heavenly human five decays tribulation does not affect us. However, if spiritual energy is depleted and we are long deprived of its nourishment, our true spirits will still weaken and fall into slumber. The plague-ridden old ghost's purpose in seizing a body and becoming the artifact spirit of his life-bound magical treasure was precisely to exploit this. Is there really no way to resist the heavenly human five decays tribulation? Surely, in the ancient immortal cultivation era, all those powerful beings wouldn't just sit around waiting for death. Lu Qing inquired. How could they just sit around waiting for death? Yen let out a cold laugh. People who practice cultivation cherish their lives the most, especially those old monsters who have strong cultivation and have lived a long time. They fear death the most. When the cultivation era was just entering its end and the heaven and earth rules began to change, with spiritual energy showing signs of decline, those old monsters had already foreseen this great calamity and started to make arrangements early on. Later on, when many cultivation sects began to clash and fight over resources, it was their doing behind the scenes. Their goal was to consolidate the resources of the entire cultivation world and carry out their plan to evade the heavenly human five decays tribulation. What plan? Lu Qing asked. I can't be certain of that either. At that time, there were many rumors. Some said that those old monsters wanted to create a secret realm to escape the sensing of the heaven and earth rules, and then wait for the revival of the next cultivation era. Others claimed they intended to gather all the resources of the cultivation world and forge an unprecedented magical treasure to break through the realm barrier and leave this world. There were even rumors that they planned to collect all the spiritual medicine from the entire cultivation world to refine a batch of top-quality elixirs to push their cultivation to the limit and ascend by crossing the tribulation. In short, opinions varied, and it's uncertain what was true. In any case, my Lihua sect didn't survive to see the true coming of the heavenly human five decays tribulation, as we were already annihilated in a fight against a rival sect. Creating a secret realm to escape disaster? A thought struck Lu Qing and he said, Senior, nowadays there are a few secret lands in the world, which are said to have a history of tens of thousands of years. I wonder if these are the secret realms you speak of. Then, Lu Qing shared with Yen the information he knew about the 4 great secret places. Suspended Mountain, Cloud Water Secret Realm, Qingyang Temple, Cold Water Palace? Yen showed a hint of confusion upon hearing these names. These 4 sects, although they were considered top forces in the ancient immortal cultivation era, by logic, their foundations should not be sufficient to create a secret realm able to evade the heavenly human five decays tribulation. Could it be that something significant has happened in the cultivation world after I fell into slumber? Are you suggesting that Suspended Mountain and the rest couldn't possibly have created a secret realm that's been passed down for tens of thousands of years? Lu Qing asked. Not necessarily. In the ancient immortal cultivation era, there were many secret realms, born and annihilated alongside the space of this world. If a power is willing to pay the price, using a powerful spiritual artifact as a sacrifice to merge into the secret realm and suppress the space, it is possible to keep the secret realm in existence for a long time without closure. Back then, nearly all the top cultivation sects each owned one or two secret realms as a contingency. But as I said, secret realms are born from the space of this world and are likewise affected by the heaven and earth laws of this world. Even if one hides in a secret realm, they cannot avoid the heavenly human five decays tribulation. Unless one is willing to pay an unimaginable price to make the space of the secret realm completely independent, shielding it from the sensing of the external heaven and earth laws. Only then might there be a slim chance to not be ensnared by the heavenly human five decays tribulation. However, the cost is far beyond what a single sect can bear. So these 4 secret lands you mentioned, even if they really have been passed down for tens of thousands of years and are forces inherited from the ancient immortal cultivation era, the disciples inside would have changed countless generations, and it would be absolutely impossible for old monsters from ancient times to survive. What if there are existences like the plague-ridden old ghost, who have survived by seizing artifact spirits? Lu Qing asked. In that case, it is possible, but spiritual artifacts are rare, and seizing a body carries great risks if it's not one's life-bound magical treasure. Even if one is lucky enough to successfully seize a body and become an artifact spirit, it's like trapping oneself in a cage. Not everyone has the resolve to make such a decision. So even if some of these old monsters survived, there would undoubtedly be very few of them. At most 2 or 3. Hearing this, Lu Qing felt somewhat relieved. Yan keenly noticed this slight change in Lu Qing. He couldn't help but ask with curiosity, why? Does young master have a grudge with these several secret lands? Chapter 514. Secrets of the Secret Realm, Desire to Set Up an Array. It's not really a huge grudge, Lu Qing said lightly, before going on to briefly describe the source of the enmity between him and Suspended Mountain. This left Yan speechless. So you've slaughtered a batch of their monks, and that's not a big grudge? However, he also picked up that the cause of the dispute lay with Suspended Mountain itself. He couldn't help but sigh. Back in ancient times, Suspended Mountain, though a bit overbearing, was still considered a righteous sect. Who would have thought it would become so degenerate now, perverting right and wrong, harboring filth and accepting trash? Lu Qing just smiled and didn't say anything. He hadn't witnessed Suspended Mountain of ancient times, so he didn't feel entitled to comment. But the current Suspended Mountain was destined to only have one survivor between it and him. Given the behavior of that bald Shenming and his cohorts, Lu Qing believed that even if he didn't trouble Suspended Mountain, they would certainly not let things lie. But young master need not worry. That secret land of Suspended Mountain is probably nothing more than an ordinary secret realm. Under the changes of the heavens and earth, even if the realm is stabilized with a spiritual artifact and doesn't collapse, the people hiding within won't be too powerful in their cultivation. Otherwise, once it triggers the sensing of the heaven and earth rules, they would inflict a calamity, and the whole realm would suffer. Even now, the evolution of the heaven and earth rules hasn't reached a stage where cultivators above foundation establishment can freely move. So even if Suspended Mountain seeks revenge, the disciples they send won't be too strong, Yan consoled. Lu Qing said, let's not talk about this for now. Senior, you mentioned earlier that this realm has seen many secret realms appear. That's right, these so-called secret realms are actually minor worlds and spaces that emerge and fade away within this realm. During the ancient immortal cultivation era, secret realms emerged and disappeared almost every moment. However, most of these realms are very small and difficult to explore. Some are so minute they can only accommodate 1 or 2 people entering, and their existence is short-lived, possibly emerging for just an hour or 2 before vanishing again. Such micro-secret realms, with extremely short lifespans and seen through at a glance, generally hold little value. One must be careful, or their dissipation might damage oneself, or they could possibly be trapped inside and never escape. Therefore, few would risk entering micro-secret realms. Usually, only small or larger realms are worth exploring. If a medium or large realm appears, it is even more significant. It will certainly attract the covetous gaze and struggle of many sect forces and powerful cultivators. If these realms can be secured with magical treasures and arrays to stabilize the space, they are the best refuges and backups. Moreover, within them are often fostered some rare treasures, excellent resources for cultivation. Yan went on to inform Lu Qing about secret realms in detail. Secret realms emerge and fade, giving birth to treasures. Lu Qing slowly chewed on these phrases, contemplatively. That's right, in fact, from the middle of the ancient immortal cultivation era, secret realms became very significant. Resources in the cultivation world had become increasingly scarce after being mined and scavenged for a long time. Only those secret realms that fluctuated unpredictably within the depths of space continued to foster rare treasures. Thus, each time a medium or large unclaimed realm emerged, the cultivation world would be sure to erupt into a fierce struggle, a violent turmoil for possession. What about the Li Hua sect back in the day? The Li Hua sect once controlled a medium-sized secret realm, but don't think about it. During ancient times, as the spiritual energy began to wane, the secret realms controlled by major sects showed signs of collapse. Unless, as I've said, someone is willing to fully integrate a spiritual artifact-class treasure into the realm, it might be possible to prevent its collapse. But spiritual artifacts are so rare that, apart from those top, exorbitantly wealthy supreme sects, nearly no other forces dare such extravagance. The Li Hua sect had only this one spiritual artifact. Naturally, it was the same. Therefore, that realm must have vanished tens of thousands of years ago. What a pity! Lu Qing felt somewhat regretful. If that realm still existed, and he could control it, he would have much more confidence at hand. At the very least, he would have an escape route for when difficult situations arose in the future. Young master need not feel regret, Yan said with a smile. Didn't I just say that secret realms are born and fade away dependent on this world? Now that the heavens and earth are changing and spiritual energy is recovering, once it reaches a certain density, new secret realms will inevitably appear. By then, with young master's abilities, acquiring one or two secret realms should not be difficult. Let's talk about the future when it comes. Lu Qing wasn't dazzled by the big pie in the sky, shaking his head. Who knew when this world would evolve to the point where secret realms would emerge? If it turned out to require hundreds or even thousands of years of waiting, these thoughts were premature. But Yan's words still granted Lu Qing much insight. At the least, he knew that the foundation of Suspended Mountain was not as terrifying as he had imagined. If the secret land of Suspended Mountain indeed teemed with a host of old monsters who had lived tens of thousands of years, then he would truly have to consider how to escape. Next, Lu Qing sought further understanding from Yan about other news of the ancient cultivation world, which greatly broadened his horizons. Only then did he put away the leaving fire tripod, preparing to return to the village. However, this time, given the improved relationship with Yan, Lu Qing didn't continue to block its perception, allowing it to sense the outside world. Chapter 5:15. Who would have thought that in such a remote place, there would actually be a stronghold of the Divine Talisman sect? It seems that after I fell into a deep sleep, many major events must have transpired in the cultivation world. Exiting the valley, Yan sensed the surroundings and remarked with some sighs. Was the Divine Talisman sect very impressive back in ancient times? Lu Qing asked. Indeed, it was impressive. Although the Divine Talisman sect had few disciples, each one was truly an exceptional talent. Even the core true teachings of other top sects would often be overshadowed by them. This sect was exceptionally mystical, pursuing a cultivation philosophy that took all things under the heavens and on earth as teachers. They were particularly skilled in the arts of talismans and arrays. The same talismanic magic and arrays, when cast by their hands, would often be much more powerful. As such, back then, the Divine Talisman sect was considered one of the most powerful forces in the cultivation world, with few sects willing to provoke them. Upon hearing Yen mention that the Divine Talisman sect's disciples could unleash talismanic magic and arrays with greater power than other cultivators, Lu Qing immediately thought of the Divine Soul Talisman within his glabella acupoint. He knew that the reason lay therein. The Divine Soul Talisman was incredibly mystical, greatly reinforcing the power of talismanic magic and arrays. Naturally, the force unleashed would also be much more formidable. However, he did not bring this up and instead changed the subject. Senior Yen, after we return, I'm afraid I will need to trouble you, as I plan to refine some artifacts soon to deploy in arrays. When Lu Qing returned to Jili village and arrived at the half-mountain small courtyard, an unexpected joy was waiting for him. He saw a black figure suddenly emerge from within the courtyard, leaping into his embrace and rubbing its head continuously against his chest. Little Li, you're awake? Lu Qing hugged little Li, thrilled beyond expectation. MHM, I woke up this morning. Little Li had such a comfortable sleep. Little Li's delicate voice resounded in Lu Qing's mind. You might have enjoyed your sleep, but little Yen was quite worried about you. Lu Qing teased with a laugh. A black knight spirit fox? At that moment, Yan's surprised voice echoed in Lu Qing's mind. Lu Qing's heart stirred, but he did not directly inquire. Instead, he held little Li and walked further into the courtyard. As expected, he saw little Yen doing her studies, and the elder doctor was sitting at a stone table beside Wei Shanhai, playing chess. As little Yen grew older, her studies had become heavier, with much homework to do. Brother, you're back. Little Yen saw Lu Qing and her face lit up with happiness. When little Li suddenly ran out, I knew it was you returning. Yeah, I just got back. Lu Qing nodded and then greeted his master and the others. Master, I have returned. Senior Wei as well, I hope. What about it? During this trip into the mountains, did you find anything? The elder doctor stopped playing chess and asked. He knew that Lu Qing went into the mountains to inspect the condition there. The changes in the mountains are not small. Lu Qing's expression turned serious. Master, the living creatures in the mountains have all undergone varying degrees of transformation, especially the poisonous insects and snakes, whose toxicity has greatly increased. Even an ordinary martial artist who suffers a bite would likely not endure it. Is it that serious? The elder doctor's face also became solemn. If that's the case, it's not good news for the mountain villagers nearby. Many of the villages within 10 miles around, like Jili village, make their living by farming. However, many also rely on entering the mountains to gather herbs and hunt. If the situation in the mountains is as severe as Lu Qing said, it could be considered a disaster for those villagers. The situation in the mountains aside, it's rarely visited by people, so as long as one does not venture too deep, there shouldn't be much trouble. What I fear is, after some time passes, those poisonous insects and snakes, if their spiritual nature strengthens and they begin to migrate outward, that would truly be adverse. The elder doctor's heart shook, realizing the possibility in what Lu Qing was saying. If it were just the increased toxicity of these creatures, it would not be too frightening, because by the instincts of these venomous beings, they would not easily leave their territory. But what was really dreadful was the possibility that with the nourishment of spiritual energy, if these creatures gained spiritual wisdom, everything could become unpredictable. So, Qing, what do you intend to do? Elder Doctor inquired. He knew that for matters involving spiritual energy, Lu Qing was more knowledgeable. I plan to set up an array around the village for vigilance and defense, to prevent potential dangers before they arise, lest poisonous insects and snakes suddenly emerge from the mountains, and we remain oblivious. Lu Qing laid out his plan. Set up an array? Are you certain you can do it? The elder doctor was slightly surprised. By now, he was no longer a novice in the realm of cultivation. After reading the Jade Scrolls given to him by Lu Qing, he had gained a lot of understanding about the common knowledge of the immortal cultivation. He knew that setting up an array that could envelop the entire Jili village was not a simple matter. I can't say I'm absolutely certain, but I might as well give it a try, Lu Qing said without full confidence. However, for this matter, I'm afraid I will need the help of Senior Wei. Oh, what does young Master Lu need this old man's help with? Wei Shanhai had been very interested when he heard Lu Qing mention setting up an array. Now knowing that his help was needed, he immediately asked. Junior needs a batch of refined iron and jade, as well as… Lu Qing listed all the materials he needed, and he took a piece of paper from the homework little Yen was doing, writing a list on it. If possible, Junior hopes Senior can gather the materials as soon as possible. Lu Qing handed the list to Wei Shanhai. Young Master Lu, rest assured, I will have all the items for you within 3 days, Wei Shanhai immediately promised. The things required by Lu Qing weren't considered extremely precious. It was just that the quantity needed was larger, which might require a considerable amount of money. But for Wei Shanhai, what was money worth? Especially now, during times of great change, with the natural world transforming and spiritual energy recovery. No one knew what the future would hold. Their Wei family, although now fortified by 2 innate realm beings, Wei Shanhai knew that it was far from sufficient. To stand firm in this era of dramatic changes, one must learn to seek powerful support. And to Wei Shanhai, Lu Qing was the most formidable support he knew of. In the last few days at the residence, he had learned in detail about their recent venture to Central State, particularly the events in Holy City, from Wei Xian's mouth. Only then did he realize that what they had experienced on their journey was so epic in scope. Especially Lu Qing, who, in Holy City, had astonishingly crossed the heavenly tribulation with his physical body to break through to the innate realm. Moreover, he alone, with a single blade, had slain many masters of the suspended mountain, not just a few. He even defeated the 3rd saint of Holy Mountain. The entire Holy City dared not make a sound. Even thinking about it now, Wei Shanhai still felt his heart and spirit tremble. Such a powerful Lu Qing, he naturally wanted to try all means to get on good terms and maintain the relationship. Once Wei Shanhai left, ordering his clan to help Lu Qing gather materials, Lu Qing then turned his gaze to little Li. The little one seemed to have no significant change upon waking up from its sleep, but he keenly felt that its life aura had undergone a fundamental transformation. However, just as Lu Qing was about to activate his superpower to check up on little Li's current state, the voice of Yen once again echoed in his mind. Unexpectedly, young master, your luck is so good to have tamed a spiritual beast like the Black Knight Spirit Fox. Senior Yen, do you know the origins of little Li? Lu Qing replied with his divine soul power. Is little Li the name of this Black Knight Spirit Fox? Well chosen, since Black Knight Spirit Foxes are more inclined towards fire attributes. The character Li suits well. Yen first praised, then continued. As for its origins, if my guess is correct, it should be a descendant of one of the 12 demon kings under the Supreme Demon Emperor from the ancient immortal cultivation era, the offspring of the King of the Night. King of the Night? Lu Qing felt a slight shock in his heart. Chapter 516, Refining the Magic Pillar, Changes in the Celestial Phenomena. Yen, you mentioned that little Li's father might possibly be the King of the Night? Indeed, during the ancient immortal cultivation era, although human cultivators were formidable, they weren't the only dominant force. At least the Demon Clan and the Sea Clan were 2 massive forces that could contend with them. Let's not speak of the Sea Clan. They occupied the vast seas and rarely landed. The ocean was their homeland. Apart from those with powers greater than a primordial spirit, very few cultivators could venture there. As for the Demon Clan, both the Sea Clan and the Demon Clan are considered groups of spiritual beasts, except one resides in the seas and the other predominantly on land. The interactions between them were not close, and there was even friction which led to their division into 2 major forces. Otherwise, had these 2 forces united, the initial realm of human cultivators would have been much more difficult. Yen paused for a moment, then continued, As for the King of the Night I just mentioned, he is one of the 12 demon kings under the command of the overlord of the terrestrial demons, and his true form is also a Black Knight Spirit Fox. He commands the spirit fox tribe and many other demon beasts, with power formidable enough to match the primordial spirit great power of human beings. Since there is a tribe of spirit foxes, then Little Li might not necessarily be the descendant of that king of the night, right? Lu Qing raised his doubts. No, the Black Knight spirit fox is an extremely rare existence within the spirit fox tribe, not necessarily appearing even once in an age. During the time before I slept, there were only 2 Black Knight spirit foxes in the entire demon clan, and they were a couple. Thus, Little Li must be their offspring, Yen stated confidently. Lu Qing remained silent, as if that explained a lot. But how did Little Li end up here? I see its condition seems to be still young. Yen also felt puzzled. Little Li is indeed still young. I met it by chance only a couple of years ago. Lu Qing briefly recounted how he met Little Li and mentioned that Little Li had absolutely no memory of its own origin. So, it seems after I went into hibernation, indeed many major events happened in the cultivation world. Yen sighed. Otherwise, those 2 wouldn't just leave their daughter all alone. It's just unclear how they fended off the situation when the spiritual energy was depleted, and a great calamity descended. Whether they successfully left this realm or all fell during the great calamity. Lu Qing was silent. Even Yen, who had lived for tens of thousands of years, did not understand these matters, let alone him. Elder, if Little Li really is the daughter of the 2 you mentioned, then she must have been born tens of thousands of years ago, so why is she still only young? That's not hard to understand. Probably the king of the night used some exotic treasure to seal Little Li as soon as she was born. It's known that the Black Knight spirit fox possesses the attributes of fire and space, and naturally has a strange spiritual perception. This enables it to easily find treasures that are difficult for ordinary people to detect. With the profound cultivation of the king of the night, searching for treasures was as easy as flipping a hand. I remember that during a few instances when secret realms emerged, it collected the most treasures. Having some kind of exotic treasure to seal Little Li for tens of thousands of years is not impossible. So treat your Black Knight spirit fox well. This is truly a fortunate star, and when the time comes that the heaven and earth rules evolve to the point where many secret realms appear, it could be your best assist for exploring these realms, Yen said, his tone taking on a curious quality. Lu Qing's fortune appeared incredibly profound. Endowed not just with multiple spiritual artifacts but now also subduing a spiritual beast like the Black Knight spirit fox. It's hard to imagine how many opportunities he could obtain when the heaven and earth rules fully evolve and many secret realms appear. Thinking this, Yen began to anticipate with excitement, feeling the previous grievances swept away. Following a master with such supreme fortune, perhaps in the future it really could achieve the day of escaping from confinement and gaining its freedom. A fortunate star, huh? Lu Qing looked at Little Li playing with little Yen, reminded of the time he exchanged a century-old ginseng for fish. He thought about it and decided not to tell Little Li. Since the matter already dated back tens of thousands of years, it was unknown if the Black Knight spirit fox couple were still alive. Telling Little Li would only unnecessarily burden him without any benefit. Perhaps keeping the carefree demeanor that it currently possessed was precisely what the Black Knight spirit fox couple wished to see. Wei family was quick in their actions. Although Wei Shanhai mentioned it would take 3 days to gather all the materials Lu Qing required, in reality, on the second day, Wei family's convoy began transporting some of the materials continuously. Young Master Lu, this refined iron was temporarily collected from several casting workshops in the county. According to the ancient instructions, we have brought it to you first. As for the other jade materials, they have also been mobilized from the state mansion. Probably in the next 2 days, they will be delivered, Grand Steward Wei respectfully said to Lu Qing at Half Mountain's small courtyard. The Wei family, by now, took any request from Lu Qing very seriously. This batch of refined iron was personally escorted by the Grand Steward. Thank you, Grand Steward. Lu Qing firstly courteously thanked him, then started inspecting the refined iron. Ah Qing, what array do you need to arrange that requires so much refined iron? The elder doctor, seeing the large quantity of refined iron escorted by Grand Steward Wei and hearing that more was yet to come, couldn't help but feel surprised. Chapter 517. Already not much left. Lu Qing shook his head. This refined iron. I still need to further purify it. Not much will remain in the end. It's a pity. If there were a batch of 1,000 refined iron, I wouldn't have to go through the trouble of purifying it. Housekeeper Wei, upon hearing this, 1,000 refined iron, not a single casting workshop in the whole county could forge it. It's only in their Wei family's treasury that there's a small collection. For Lu Qing to collect a batch all at once would be too difficult. Even scavenging the whole Tsang state would barely make it possible. After all, 1,000 refined iron is a treasure that can forge a 1,000 refined treasure weapon. It's always in short supply and highly sought after. Any martial artist who obtained it would think first of forging it into a weapon most suited to themselves. Very few would leave it unused and stored away. Lu Qing naturally knew that his thought was merely wishful thinking. So, after Housekeeper Wei and other people left, he immediately started the furnace to prepare for refining the refined iron. With a spell clasped, the leaving fire tripod, hanging as a pendant in front of his neck and only the size of a fingertip. Quietly it flew out, transforming into a big cauldron half the height of a man, landing in the courtyard. The elder doctor's expression shifted slightly. Though he had witnessed it more than once, every time he still couldn't help but marvel at the various mysterious methods of immortal cultivation. Yen Sr., trouble you. A piece of cake. Leave it to me. Lu Qing tossed the refined iron piled in the courtyard, bit by bit, into the leaving fire tripod. Yen accepted everything without rejection, swallowing it all. For it, with a space of its own within, not just a bit of refined iron, even a small mountain could be swallowed. After swallowing all the refined iron, inside the spiritual artifact space, Yen formed a magic seal. The next moment, a massive amount of flames appeared out of thin air, fiercely refining that pile of refined iron. Soon, the refined iron was melted, transforming into a large pool of iron liquid. Yen looked relaxed, controlling the flames within the space to continue refining the pool of iron liquid. For the leaving fire tripod as a spiritual artifact, refining mere mortal iron was a trivial matter. It didn't require any effort to easily accomplish this. Finally, at the limit of refining, when no more impurities could be refined, Lu Qing's figure also appeared in the spiritual artifact space. He took over control of the leaving fire tripod, and under the control of his heart and spirit, the pure pool of iron liquid divided into dozens of small pools. Following that, Lu Qing began to imprint restrictions into them. The elder doctor had been by his side all along, aiding him as a protector as Lu Qing mediated. Then, before long, he saw small iron bars being expelled from the leaving fire tripod, each bar faintly exhibiting mysterious patterns, seemingly containing some kind of mystical power. After dozens of small iron bars were expelled, Lu Qing finally opened his eyes. A trace of fatigue lingered in his gaze. Ah Qing, all forged? Yes, sadly. There's still too little refined iron. I could only manage to forge 36 magic pillars. Lu Qing spoke somewhat dissatisfied. How many magic pillars do you need for your array formation? The elder doctor asked. In my plan, I need 108 magic pillars to set up a complete array. The elder doctor was somewhat astonished. The refined iron sent this time by the Wei family was already quite substantial, yet it hadn't even met half of Lu Qing's requirement. However, 36 magic pillars can barely set up the framework of the array. Lu Qing waved his hand, and the 36 magic pillars, refined by his heart and spirit, suddenly emitted a bright light, lifted off the ground, transforming into beams of light, flying towards the mountain below. Lu Qing's divine soul power now, comparable to the Foundation establishment realm, if he fully sensed, movements within miles could hardly escape his notice. Covering the tiny Jili village was naturally not a problem. Under his control of the divine soul, 36 magic pillars precisely landed in the positions he desired, silently burying themselves underground. Having lived in Jili village for so long, Lu Qing was well acquainted with the geographical distribution of the village. Thus, the points he chose were the most suitable nodes for setting up the formation. With the pillars in place, the vital breath linked up and the entire Jili village immediately underwent a change. The earth's energy was swiftly cleared, and the spiritual energy surrounding the village also slowly gathered. Of course, these changes were difficult for the ordinary villagers of Jili to notice. They only suddenly felt that the village seemed much cooler. Elder, have you noticed that it seems cooler at home? At Mr. Zhang's house, his spouse, who was fanning herself with a sunflower fan, remarked with some surprise. It does seem much cooler. What's this about? Is it going to rain outside? Originally lying on a reclining chair and feeling somewhat overwhelmed by the heat, Mr. Zhang quickly got up and ran outside to collect the clothes. However, when he reached the outside courtyard, he discovered that the sun was shining brilliantly and there wasn't even a cloud in sight, the fierce sun hanging glaringly overhead. Yet, oddly enough, even standing under the scorching sun, he did not feel the intense heat from before. Instead, he felt the sunshine was warm, as if it were autumn or winter. What's going on? This strange situation, rather than making Mr. Zhang happy, gave him the creeps. When something abnormal happens, there must be monsters about. Such defiance of common sense often indicates that something extremely unusual is happening. At this time, other sharp-witted villagers in the village also noticed the sudden change and rushed out to check. Just as everyone was anxious, Lu Qing's voice suddenly came from the mountain. Everyone, do not worry. The change in the village is caused by me. It is beneficial and harmless to the village and won't hurt anyone. Though this voice came from the mountain, it was not loud. It seemed as though it rang next to the villagers' ears. Hearing this, all the villagers suddenly realized, and they were finally reassured. So it's Qing who did this. Then it's fine. Everyone should go back to what they were doing. Qing is getting more and more powerful. I wonder what incredible skill he has learned this time. He can even influence the weather now. This is good. The weather has been getting hotter lately, hotter than previous years. It was almost unbearable for me. Now that it has cooled down, I can finally sleep well at night. Yes, this year's weather has been strange. A few months ago, there was a brutally cold downpour. I heard someone in the neighboring village even froze to death. Now it's unbearably hot. If this continues, there must be a drought coming. Thank goodness for Qing. His skills have grown even greater. He even made the whole village cooler. That almost compares to the gods from the operas, doesn't it? Could it be that Qing and the elder doctor went out this time to seek immortal techniques? The villagers discussed animatedly. Their conversation went from the recent weather to speculating whether Lu Qing knew immortal techniques, becoming more and more exaggerated. In Half Mountain's small courtyard, Lu Qing, hearing these discussions, shook his head with a smile and withdrew his divine soul sensing. However, his expression had become more serious. Actually, the villagers weren't wrong, since the rules of heaven and earth changed with the recovery of spiritual energy. In the past few months, the weather had indeed become much more complicated. Not to mention the chilling rain from months ago. Just this past month, with the blazing sun and increasingly scorching weather, almost reaching the limit that ordinary people can endure, seemed very abnormal. Master, it seems this change in heaven and earth for ordinary folks, it's really hard to say if it's good or bad. Probably more bad than good. The elder doctor's face also showed a sign of lament. He had also heard the villagers' discussion just now. Jili village is adjacent to the 10,000 Great Mountains with clear mountains and beautiful waters. It is still like this. What about those places with even harsher environments? Facing this abnormal weather, what kind of situation would they be in? Thinking this, the elder doctor felt somewhat heavy-hearted. After a while, he suddenly spoke. Qing, these past few days, I have been thinking of taking a trip to the nearby villages. Chapter 518, The Flying Sword Refining Method, Ma Gu's Ambition. Master, are you wanting to? Lu Qing saw the expression on his master's face and understood somewhat. Judging by our village's situation, the other villages are likely not faring well either. I'll walk around first, to see the extent of the impact the changes in heaven and earth have had on ordinary people. It's better to prepare early, to avoid panic when troubles arise. The elder doctor spoke with a somewhat heavy tone. Master, don't worry, I'll look after the home. Lu Qing nodded his head. He knew his master had the benevolence of a doctor. Even after becoming a cultivator, he had not changed this disposition. He certainly would not stand idly by and watch ordinary people suffer. In the past 2 years, the master would occasionally take him to walk around the neighboring villages, providing free consultations to poor solitary elders who couldn't afford treatment. It was normal to be concerned about being away for so long. Master, give me your sword. I'll help you refine it again. After thinking for a moment, Lu Qing suddenly said, Refine it again? I feel that this sword is quite good. The elder doctor didn't hesitate, drew the sword, and handed it to Lu Qing. However, he was somewhat puzzled. In his eyes, the treasure sword that Lu Qing had previously given him was already very good, incredibly sharp and unbreakable. Even if he exerted all his strength, he wouldn't damage it. A genuinely superior divine weapon. This long sword was forged by your disciple in the past when my artifact refining skill was still immature, so there are many imperfections, Lu Qing said with a smile. The sword he gave to his master was made from outer heaven fallen iron. At that time, when his spiritual power was inadequate and he was merely at the postnatal realm, he could barely forge it to the level of a divine weapon. Frankly, it was somewhat a waste of the sword's materials. Now, his strength had transformed, and having the Leaving Fire tripod, a tool for refining spiritual artifacts, it was time to upgrade his master's weapon. When Lu Qing put the divine weapon long sword into the Leaving Fire tripod, Yan's eyes nearly bulged. A long sword forged entirely from outer heaven fallen iron, yet only a mortal weapon. Who would waste such heavenly materials? Yan was astounded. Outer heaven fallen iron, even during the ancient immortal cultivation era, was considered an extremely precious material for artifact refining. Many magic artifacts and treasures would greatly increase in quality if some outer heaven fallen iron were integrated into them. Even called one of the best materials for cultivating the embryo of spiritual energy, its value was second only to chaos divine iron, such an exotic treasure. The Lihua sect, when they were refining the Leaving Fire tripod and constructing its body, had integrated a lot of outer heaven fallen iron. Even the words left behind by their former young sect master, when introducing the Leaving Fire tripod, expressed regret that if the Lihua sect had had enough outer heaven fallen iron back then, perhaps they wouldn't have lost against the rival sect's spiritual artifacts. It shows how precious outer heaven fallen iron was. So, seeing a completely outer heaven fallen iron forged sword now, how could Yan not be shocked? It was forged by this junior, Lu Qing said somewhat sheepishly. At the time of forging this long sword, this junior's cultivation was shallow and incapable of refining restrictions on it, so I could only barely forge it into a mortal weapon. Please forgive my inadequacy. Lu Qing knew that, in the era of ancient immortal cultivation, weapons and treasures were typically divided into 4 levels: mortal weapons, magic artifacts, treasures, and spiritual artifacts. Therefore, although this master's long sword in the eyes of the world was already a peerless divine weapon, inside it lacked restrictions and the ability to connect with the power of heaven and earth. In the eyes of a master refiner like Yan, it was still just a mortal weapon. Hearing Lu Qing's words, Yan was speechless. Never had it imagined that the one it accused of wasting heavenly materials was Lu Qing. For a moment it didn't know what to say. Fortunately, Lu Qing actively resolved the awkwardness and smiled. So, this junior would like to ask the senior to help me re-refine this treasure sword, and also this junior's war saber. With that, Lu Qing took out his war saber and placed it into the Leaving Fire tripod as well. Another mortal weapon completely forged from outer heaven fallen iron? Yan, seeing the long saber Lu Qing put in, was once again startled. Since his breakthrough, Lu Qing had not had the time to refine his war saber anew, and it remained a mortal weapon. After a while, Yan came back to his senses, looked around, and asked, "Young master, do you have a lot of outer heaven fallen iron?" "I do have quite an amount. It was obtained from the Chenkuan Qi bag. Lu Qing did not deny. To be obtained from the Chenkuan Qi bag, could it be that Taoist Xuanfeng had collected so much outer heaven fallen iron? Taoist Xuanfeng? Lu Qing was puzzled. Taoist Xuanfeng, the previous owner of this Chenkuan Qi bag, was also quite a famous primordial spirit great power during the ancient immortal cultivation era. His wind Taoism skills were exceptional. This Chenkuan Qi bag was his famous magical treasure. But he always preferred solitude, rarely interacting with others, quite mysterious. It's unknown how his later years turned out and why he would leave behind this Chenkuan Qi bag. Yen slowly explained. I see. Lu Qing understood. When he first obtained the Chenkuan Qi bag, he didn't know if it was because his cultivation was too low or for some other reason. The information he detected did not directly reveal the name of the being who had crafted the Chenkuan Qi bag. Only now did he realize that the person was called Taoist Xuanfeng. This Taoist Xuanfeng had a strange temperament, disliking interaction with others, and was known as a rather reclusive primordial spirit loose cultivator during ancient times. Chapter 519. I don't know where he got so much outer heaven fallen iron from, Yen sighed. Cultivation is not an easy path, fraught with countless hardships and perils. It can be said that none who achieve the state of primordial spirit are ordinary, especially those loose cultivator primordial spirit great powers. Each has their unique strengths, powerful methods, and endless ways to preserve their lives. Generally, major sects, unless absolutely necessary, wouldn't provoke them rashly. Therefore, few people know of their strange encounters and foundations. Just like now, if it weren't for Lu Qing, Yen wouldn't possibly know. The Plague Ghost actually once obtained an exotic treasure like the Chaos Divine Iron, and Taoist Sun Feng also collected a large amount of outer heaven fallen iron. From this, one can imagine that every primordial spirit great power is actually a person with rich fate, each with their destiny and adventures. Yen hesitated for a moment, then said, Young master, since you have some surplus outer heaven fallen iron, I wonder, do you need outer heaven fallen iron, senior? Indeed, during the waning period of the ancient immortal cultivation era, the Lihua sect and an enemy sect fought a life and death battle, and I clashed with the opponent's sect spirit artifact for a long time. In the end, although both sides were injured, my injuries were somewhat more severe, and cracks formed in the body of the leaving fire tripod. To this day, it has not been fully restored and healed. If I could absorb some outer heaven fallen iron, not only could I completely repair the tripod body, but its essence might also become stronger. Lu Qing, recalling the information on the leaving fire tripod revealed by his superpower and the last words left by the Lihua sect's young sect master, knew that Yen was not lying. The leaving fire tripod indeed had suffered heavy damage, and when the Lihua sect originally refined this spiritual artifact, they had also incorporated a good amount of outer heaven fallen iron. He nodded. Of course, if you, senior, can fully recover, it would also be a great support for me. After I finish refining these two blades, I will hand over the outer heaven fallen iron to you for absorption. Outer heaven fallen iron might be valuable, but the leaving fire tripod was now Lu Qing's spiritual artifact. If he could completely repair it, it would be all benefit and no harm to him. Let's not delay then, let's start right now. Upon hearing this, Yen became somewhat eager. Lu Qing smiled faintly and likewise entered his heart and spirit into the leaving fire tripod, starting the process of refining the sword and knife. The next day, Lu Qing took out the newly refined sword and knife, threw a large chunk of outer heaven fallen iron into the tripod for Yen to slowly absorb. Then, holding the newly refined treasure sword, he went to the half-mountain small courtyard. Is this a treasure sword that has been re-refined? The elder doctor held the long sword, examining it closely. The long sword had changed its appearance, becoming even colder. Most importantly, there were mysterious runes faintly visible on the blade, emitting an exceptionally mystical aura. Master, I have incorporated the water and fire prohibition into this sword, so it can guide and amplify the spiritual energy and spiritual power of water and fire. You are skilled in the water and fire Tao, so it should be very suitable for you, Lu Qing explained. Not bad. I can faintly sense that the power within this sword is resonating with the spiritual power within me. The elder doctor said, showing surprise. Ah Ching, how is this magic sword to be used? After you perform a blood recognition as the master, you can refine it with your heart and spirit at all times. Over time, this sword will become harmonized with your will. After you fully refine it, you can even store it within your dantian to aid in your cultivation. I also have this jade scroll for you which contains the flying sword refining method. Once you are familiar with it, you can add your own restrictions and nurture this magic sword. Lu Qing handed over a jade scroll to his master. Although this treasure sword had only been infused with a single layer of water and fire prohibition, and was currently a low-grade magic sword, the power it actually possessed was no less than those of treasure-level magical swords. As long as the master learned the flying sword refining method, he could later add his own restrictions and enhance the power of the magic sword. That's good. This way, I won't have to trouble you every time. The elder doctor did not delay and took the jade scroll. Seeing his master tuck away the jade scroll, Lu Qing revealed a smile. It was strange, indeed. The master always had the character of medical benevolence. But, contradictorily, his talent in the sword Dao was extremely astonishing. Despite having killed only a few people, he was able to comprehend an unmatched sword energy domain for offensive strikes. The path of cultivation truly is broad and profound, rendering it unpredictable. After receiving the magic sword, the elder doctor did not linger any longer. He slung his medicine basket on his back and headed downhill, preparing to visit the nearby regions within 10 or 8 miles. Lu Qing watched his master's figure recede into the distance until it vanished, then withdrew his gaze. Young master, your master is truly an extraordinary person. Yan, being in the leaving fire tripod and aware of the elder doctor's purpose for going out, also held additional respect for the old man. Being a cultivator, yet still able to stay true to one's original aspirations, adhering to one's heart in treating the illnesses of weak mortals. With such temperament, as long as he does not fall midway, he will surely achieve great things in the future. Master, his eldership has always been this way. Lu Qing heard the unusual tone in Yan's voice and chuckled. He had also wanted to accompany his master to provide free medical consultations, but the current situation did not allow them such a luxury of lowering their guard. After all, their trip to Central State this time had attracted quite a few enemies. It was only a matter of time before those enemies managed to investigate their background and movements. It would be highly problematic if both he and his master went out, only for their enemies to come searching for them. Therefore, someone still needed to stay and guard Jili village. As for Master, with the magic swords he had refined, coupled with his master's sword energy domain, Lu Qing believed that in this world now, within the innate realm, there likely existed no one who could pose a threat to his master. The elder doctor's trips for providing free medical consultations usually required 10 days to half a month. So, in the following days, Lu Qing and little Yen simply stayed in the half-mountain small courtyard. After all, it was quiet here, and whatever he needed to do wouldn't disturb the villagers. The next afternoon, the Wei family's caravan once again arrived at the half-mountain small courtyard. Brother Lu Qing, Dr. Lu Xiao. It was still housekeeper Wei leading the caravan, but this time, Ma Gu and Wei Zian, the master and disciple, had also come along. You've also come? Why didn't you stay at home for a while longer? Lu Qing greeted the two with a smile on his face. Yeah, I got bored of staying at home and wanted to come here to the other residents to play. As for my master, he's escaping a marriage arrangement by coming to the village. Wei Zian astonishingly revealed this explosive news. Oh, is Master Ma getting married? Lu Qing looked at Ma Gu with surprise. No such thing, Brother Lu Qing. Don't listen to this kid's nonsense. Ma Gu glared at his disciple and shook his head. That's just my parents nagging. I've never thought about that sort of thing. Master Ma has no intention of marrying? Lu Qing was somewhat surprised. Given Ma Gu's age, which was already in the 30s in this era, even though martial artists have long lifespans, he would be considered quite mature. It was unexpected that he had never entertained the notion of marriage. Having seen the summit's view, how could one be content with the ordinary? Ma Gu said earnestly. Right now, all I want to do is concentrate on martial arts, strive to break through, step into the innate realm. Matters of men and women are not at all on my mind. If it had been the old Ma Gu, maybe he would have complied with his parents' wishes, seeking a good family's daughter to marry and settle down to live out the rest of his life in peace. After all, he knew his talent, and no matter how hard he tried, he would not be able to achieve the status of martial arts grandmaster, to step into the innate realm. But now, after that trip to Central State, having witnessed the rivalry of many powerful individuals, especially the various feats of Lu Qing and the Elder Doctor, additionally, after absorbing a strand of origin energy and greatly enhancing his talent, Ma Gu's goals had quietly changed. He was no longer content with just being a postnatal realm martial artist. He wanted to climb to higher pinnacles of martial arts, to witness even more splendid vistas. He even aspired to have a glimpse of the elegance of that legendary path of immortal cultivation. In comparison to that, what did mere matters of men and women count for? Chapter 520. Array established, cultivating the spirit field. Finally, all the refinement is done. In the half-mountain's small courtyard, Lu Qing looked at the various magic pillars before him, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and his face showed a smile. Even with his strong divine soul power, after consecutively refining many items for setting up arrays over several days, he still felt his heart and spirit were exhausted. Fortunately, under this intense, continuous refinement, he also felt that his heart and spirit had been greatly tempered. His use of divine soul power had become much more exquisite, which was considered a harvest. With a wave of his hand, the magic pillars on the ground once again took flight, turning into streaks of light. Most of the magic pillars fell towards Juli village below, and the rest landed around the small mountain where the half-mountain small courtyard was located, sinking into the ground. The 72 magic pillars sank into the ground, echoing the previous 36 pillars. They formed array nodes, interlinked chi mechanisms, and connected together. Suddenly, in Juli village, strange phenomena arose again. A faint light of the array shone from the edge of Juli village and then slowly faded, vanishing into the ground. Threads and wisps of mist drifted and weaved through the village. This made the village appear to have a somewhat ethereal aura. Having experienced this once before, the villagers didn't panic this time, knowing that it should be Lu Qing up to something again. Of course, they were still curious. When a villager saw a wisp of mist drift close by, driven by curiosity, they reached out to grasp it. The mist turned into a wisp of vapor, landing in the villager's hand. The next moment, the villager felt a chill that refreshed their mind and spirit. It not only invigorated them, but also seemed to make their body feel lighter. They were immediately astounded, finding it incredibly unbelievable. Young Master Lu, does this mist conceal some secret? At the half-mountain small courtyard above, mist also lingered. Sensing the activity, Wei Shanhai, who had hurried up the mountain, caught a wisp of mist, his eyes revealing astonishment. He felt something extraordinary within this wisp of mist. Senior Wei saw clearly. This mist contains the essence of vitality. It can greatly benefit the body. Staying within the array, nurtured by the mist over time, can strengthen the body, reduce pains, and prolong life, Lu Qing said with a smile. Such magic! Wei Shanhai looked at the mist in his hands. Indeed, he could feel a hint of the essence of vitality. Although it was slight, one could imagine the immense benefits to one's body if nourished by this vitality fog over the long term. Looking at the drifting mist in Juli village below, and the curious villagers reaching out to touch the mist, Wei Shanhai's gaze became thoughtful. These villagers probably didn't realize the extent of the benefits they were receiving. Not to mention anything else, just the nurturing effect of the vitality fog, something that even the nobility in the royal capital couldn't enjoy. He believed that if the effects of the vitality fog became known, who knew how many people would fight tooth and nail to come here? Young Master Lu, did you set up this array just to help the villagers improve their health? Wei Shanhai asked. Of course not, the vitality fog is just a byproduct of the array. As for its other functions, the array has just been set up and the accumulated power is not yet sufficient, so I am not able to demonstrate it to you, Senior, Lu Qing explained. The effort he had expended to set up the array was naturally not only for gathering this bit of vitality fog. As a simplified version of the sect protection array of the Lihua sect, if it only had this function, that would truly be a laughingstock. The ways of immortal Tao are indeed incredibly wondrous. Hearing Lu Qing's words, Wei Shanhai was not upset but instead filled with admiration. At the same time, his desire for the path of immortal cultivation grew even more. Unfortunately, despite having spent the past few days trying to comprehend the cultivation method given to him by Lu Qing, he had only grasped a little bit of it. It would still be some time before he truly entered the threshold. Seeing the happy faces of the villagers below, Lu Qing also felt a great sense of relief in his heart. Now that the array was set up, if any cultivator below the foundation establishment stage tried to evade his detection and sneak into the village, it would be impossible. As for cultivators at or above the foundation establishment stage, not to mention that there are currently hardly a few such powerful cultivators in the entire world, if there indeed were such powerful individuals coming to Jili Village, they likely would not demean themselves by resorting to thievery. With this, the village finally had a secure guarantee. Everyone in Jili Village was uplifted as Lu Qing stood up and made his way to the location of the medicine field behind the half-mountain small courtyard. This time, the array he had set up encompassed the half-mountain small courtyard as well. Therefore, the Earth's energy here was even richer than usual. This was especially true for the medicine field. The Earth's energy was so dense that the 1,000-year-old ginseng living within it was so delighted it almost rolled around in excitement. Even when it saw Lu Qing approaching, it didn't hide underground but shook the leaves atop its head to greet him. It should be known that, on ordinary days, the 1,000-year-old ginseng always presented a cold front to Lu Qing. It still remembered how Lu Qing had captured it. The ginseng found Lu Qing both frightening and loathsome. Lu Qing himself was somewhat surprised by the ginseng's friendly gesture. However, he currently had no time to play with the little thing. He took out several crystal-clear jade tablets with mysterious runes from the Chengquan Qi bag. These were crafted from part of the jade stones that Grand Steward Wei had sent over, which Lu Qing had refined in his spare time during the days he had been making magic pillars. After measuring the area around the medicine field, selecting the right nodes, Lu Qing placed each of the jade tablets in position. As the last jade tablet was set in place, everyone seemed to feel an invisible tremor in the surrounding space. Following that, the already rich Earth's energy from the mountain started to flow slowly towards the medicine field. Even the spiritual energy from the surrounding space was subtly drawn out and merged into the medicine field. Young master, by crafting these gathering spirit steels, do you intend to cultivate a spirit field? Yan sensed this scene and transmitted his inquiry. Over the past few days absorbing the outer heaven-fallen iron that Lu Qing had provided, Yan's true spirit had recovered quite a bit. Despite working with Lu Qing to craft items like magic pillars, Yan was still at ease. Yes, though spiritual energy is recovering now, it's uncertain when many heavenly materials and earthly treasures will mature. Since that's the case, it's better to cultivate some spiritual materials ourselves, perhaps even gaining a bit of a head start. Lu Qing nodded. That's a very good idea. Yan praised him. The revival of spiritual energy also needs time to breed powerful heavenly materials and earthly treasures. In fact, during the ancient immortal cultivation era, those top cultivation sects were often those who seized the initial opportunity at the beginning of the spiritual energy recovery, staying ahead step by step. By quickly monopolizing vast resources, they eventually developed into powerful sects. Taking precautions early is the only way to have enough strength to seize the chance when the opportunity truly arises. I'm not really interested in developing forces. Lu Qing shook his head. But I've offended not a few powers, so I still need to make the necessary preparations. Lu Qing was speaking the truth. He wasn't interested in founding sects. Managing a sect often required a significant investment of heart and spirit. With that energy, he thought it would be better to focus on his cultivation diligently to enhance his cultivation. Yan didn't speak further. During these past few days of interaction, he realized that Lu Qing didn't seem to be someone with a strong desire for power. On the contrary, the young man was quite relaxed in nature. Nonchalant about many things and amiable in disposition, even common villagers could jest with him freely, and he, far from getting angry, even went to great lengths to set up an array to protect them. Compared to the ruthlessness he exhibited when threatening Yen and refining the plague ghost, he seemed like a completely different person. Such a contradictory personality and actions made Yen increasingly wary of Lu Qing. The young man was becoming more and more unfathomable. With the placement of the gathering spirit steels, the earth's energy around the medicine field grew ever denser. Added to that, the nearby nature's spiritual energy continued to accumulate. Feeling all this, the 1,000-year-old ginseng became even happier. The few leaves on its head began to dance. While Lu Qing was carefully cultivating the spirit field at Half Mountain Small Courtyard, State Mansion City was welcoming several uninvited guests.